Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the 2020 Sim Connect Live, powered by HMG Strategy. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal and CEO of HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here. We're delighted to be here partnering with Sim International and Mark Taylor and the whole Sim family, Sim Nation, if you will, reimagining the business and leading and innovating in times of radical change. A big shout out and thanks to our partners today, Aryaka and Rimini Street. Please, when they reach out to you, take a meeting, 20-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting. You might really find out, learn something new, uniquely different. They truly are great companies and worth your time and attention. And we do truly appreciate their investment in being with us this afternoon and looking forward to hearing from both of those partners in the context of today's agenda and summit. So I want to welcome Mark Taylor to the stage. Mark, great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, man. We've been working toward this for over a year. Summer last year is when we first started this conversation. I think, in fact, we were supposed to be here in Austin last week, but of course we had to pivot just a bit, did we not?
Well, we all did. We all had to pivot. We all had to reinvent. We had to lean into this pandemic, lean into the business, lean into the boardroom with the CEO, and really reimagine and reinvent the whole customer experience, business models, and complete go-to-markets. It's a whole different world, right, Mark?
Yeah, isn't it amazing, Hunter, how much advancement has happened in this, since the March window when the pandemic really reached its culmination. It's just remarkable to me as I've had the opportunity to talk to leaders around the country. I guess they say that necessity is the mother of invention, and man, have we ever demonstrated that, huh?
Well, do you remember, Mark, we were in together just coincidentally in Orlando, kicking off our first Florida summit the night of, I believe, the 11th of March, and the NBA called the season, and you knew something very different eerily was happening. And the next morning, the markets fell apart. I was up on stage. You were there in the front row with Bill Wass and our friends, Marcus Sessions and others from the 3 Sim chapters in Florida. And I think I said something like, going forward, we're never going to be able to go back. This is all uncharted time and experience. And you got to lean in courageously, passionately, authentically, and redefine your whole professional style and go to market. And actually, I think there'd be a great theme or thread to pull through the day today.
Yeah, I think so. Hunter, I heard multiple stories about leaders who had to go through changes, and in that first 30 to 45 days, when suddenly everyone had to go to this massive remote environment. I heard probably 3 or 4 stories where people took implementations that were supposed to be 6 months and did it in literally 60 hours. That much compression happened in that window of time. And since then, it's continued. All sorts of innovations. And I was just talking to Raphael, who's going to be on the panel with me later this afternoon, and in live entertainment business and how they have had to adjust. And very few businesses probably been shut down as much as travel, entertainment, all those things, and how they've had to adjust. There's been a lot of tough spots in the economy, and I know there's been a lot who've paid a high price to maintain through all of this. But my hat's off to those who found the way to navigate and come out on top through all this.
Exciting times, right? I mean,
yeah, it really has been.
Probably what, 10, 50, 100x in terms of innovation and change just overnight.
Yeah, I think so. And you look at the platform that we're running on now, this virtual platform, and the adoption. I mean, and I know that probably everyone obviously recognizes that this is here to stay. The adoption that we've done, how the level of acceptance has increased to have this type of communication. And I'm excited going forward, knowing that this capability is going to be an option that's going to be around forever, and really impact the way we move and the way we transact business, the way we build relationships, and so much more. And I know that we'll be diving into a number of those subjects today.
Absolutely. Hey, Mark, is there anything new at Sim that you want to talk about as it relates to Sim International and some key initiatives? You've brought an amazing new vision to the organization and really freshened up the whole go-to-market.
Yeah, Hunter, I guess I can speak to a few things. We've just, one of the things that we're working on is, right, we have been very much of a local chapter centric organization, and it really is one of the real competitive advantages, frankly, that we have in the marketplace is the strength of our chapters. And one of the things we're developing is the cross connectivity and building these relationships across our chapters. And as we go into next year, we're going to be working on that heavily with some CIO roundtables and across our organization. And we've got some new innovations that we'll be introducing in Q1 around our SIM Leadership Institute. So really, I really feel like we're going to be accelerating out of COVID, and to some degree, Hunter, like all of us, we've had to find a way to survive during this time. But there's this sense that we've also been building some momentum, some critical mass, that as we go into 21, it's going to be unleashed. And I think I am candidly looking for a real season of growth, as we go into 21.
Awesome. And so how many chapters all in across North America?
We've got 40 in pretty much all the major metros from San Diego and LA, Southern Cal, up to Seattle and Florida, Miami, up to Boston and Chicago, Detroit, and down here in Texas and DFW, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. It really is just Hunter, I've been here a year and a half now, a little over a year and a half in this seat. And one of the things that has just impressed me, honestly, is the quality of the people that are part of the SIM community, the investment they make, what they do for one another, the depth of relationship, and how it's really shaped the trajectory of countless people's careers and lives. And it's a real honor. It's a thrill, really, to be a part of this organization.
Mark, I got to tell you, I think one of the biggest things technology leaders need to be better at is better storytellers. This age-old art of telling a story from start to finish and bringing along your constituencies or your target audience along this journey. And I can say that for myself. I mean, I know for myself in my own career ascent, I would say the top 10 reasons I've been successful. One of the top 10, SIM is a key element, maybe number 9 or 10 right there. And I think there's a many stories of success across the SIM nation based out of RLF or APC or the various other ways SIM touches people that really, there's stories that need to be told.
Hunter, that's a really good point because it's stories that we remember. I think we're wired that way as human beings to remember stories, and way beyond facts and data points and whatever else, it's stories that really stick inside of us. There's some inspiration, honestly, Hunter, in that to elevate and shine the spotlight. And you know what, Hunter, that's one of the things that you've been doing this year, and actually for 13 years now, honestly, is going to each of the communities around the country and allowing people, giving the opportunity for folks to tell their story, of their leadership stories, their success stories, some of the stories that have bit them, and those stories are what stick with people. And I think that investment, there's a part of maybe a part of the code, really, Hunter, that you cracked in the events that you do around the country and that collaborate with all our chapters. And I think it's a key to success. And honestly, I think it's a key to success for every chapter, for not chapters, but every leader. That ability to tell a story and have it stick within people's hearts. You're going past logic, you're going past data, and getting down to the hearts of the people. And ultimately, if you're going to lead and get a group of people to follow, that's a critical capability that you've got to develop.
That's right. That's exactly right. And by the way, there's no real one school that's got it knocked out of the park in terms of how to teach you how to be an authentic leader, how to lead courageously, how to lead passionately, how to be believable, and to create followership, right?
Yeah. I would say that is an aspect of the RLF program. And that really, if you want to get down to why that program exists and what people say about it when they come out, I've talked to a number of those that sponsor people going in, and they say that when the candidates come out of RLF, they have a confidence, a courage about them to lead in a way that they didn't have before they went through the program. What I hear from those who went through the program is that it was life-changing, absolute life-changing, because it really gets down to who you are as a person and what kind of leader you can become based on what the capabilities that you've developed, the wiring that you have at your heart. And we really work on developing that authentic leader, and it begins with getting down to who am I? How am I wired? And how can I take who I am and become an exceptional leader?
That's true. And there are hundreds of people that have been through it over the decades, and
thousands, Hunter, 5,000 people have been through that program.
Amazing, and I hear amazing stories from every individual, great experience. Yeah. So if you're for the message to the CIOs in the audience here, send your high potential leaders to RLF.
Yeah. Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate that. And the executive RLF program that I went through last year, I actually went through it myself. It is off the charts. It's the next level up. We'll talk about that another time, but
very cool.
We really have a great leadership institute, and look forward to evolving that this year.
Hey, we got to jump to the first panel, but one last thing, Mark, before you go. You got some new neighbors there down in Austin, right? You got,
yes, we do.
You got Elon.
Yeah,
we got Larry.
We got a little bit of spotlight recently. Oracle moved their headquarters here, announced that just in the last week. Tesla has made a big investment, and Austin's been building. Vista Equity is another great footprint here in Austin. They have done a remarkable played a remarkable game in the VC world, very focused. And Austin's been a hot spot. Honestly, this goes back to the 50s, believe it or not. TI was a real, and IBM, the beginners of what was the Austin tech scene. But today it really is growing. And while we tip our hat to California and what they've done in Silicon Valley, we've certainly like to see ourselves as kind of the second city of technology in the U.S. And with Tesla coming in and Elon landing in Austin, it's a nice little thing to have on top.
Very cool. Hey, Mark, great to see you. We're gonna be working the whole summit together.
Yeah,
back and forth as co-host. So stay with us, and you'll be, folks. We do want this today to be interactive, right, Mark? So dial up the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat after we go through every panelist with their initial comments. We'll go back through maybe one question, but then we want to cut it over to an interactive session with you, our attendees on the chat. So next up, we have Reimagining the Business, Leading and Innovating in Times of Radical Change. I think this is a cool new title, and it's totally dialed in and appropriate. First up, we have Jeanette Horan. Jeanette's an amazing executive with incredible experience and a good friend of HMG Strategy. Jeanette is an experienced board member and strategic advisor. Hey, Jeanette, great to see you.
Thank you, Hunter. It's great to see you too. Yeah, currently on the boards of Nokia and Wolters Kluwer, both European companies.
Hey, Jeanette, we like to have a thread about leadership and career success, and you've had an amazing career over the years. You and I have been collaborating with each other for probably over 14 years now. I mean, what are some pearls of wisdom regarding success when you have those defining moments, you go left or go right? One or two just quick ideas, and then we'll dive into the panel.
I think one of the things is having courage. I really do. Sometimes it's so easy to kind of sort of, fall back into habits and experiences that we've had before and try and repeat the same thing that might have worked for us before. But sometimes you just need a little bit of courage to go out on a limb and try something a little different. And I think through my career, I showed that I had courage to take on some of those. And I think it sort of put me in good stead for where I am today.
Excellent. Do you love board work, Jeanette?
I do. I love it. It's, a career in technology gave me a great grounding, and, I feel this is partly sort of an opportunity for me to kind of give back to the community, to the business community, take everything that I learned in my operating days and now kind of, help other companies either not make the same mistake or, kind of learn from something and repeat something. But also it's an opportunity for me to learn. I mean, I've learned so much about some of these other companies and industries that I knew nothing about. So it's fantastic.
Thank you. When you think about today's conference and the pandemic that we're all going through, who would have ever predicted, right? And so here's the question. When life throws you lemons, make lemonade. How can business people find a positive outcome out of this current situation? How do you flip it around?
So I'm actually going to tell you a story about Wolters Kluwer, and some of our audience may not be familiar with them, but they are a global company. They're a venerable company, more than 150 years old. And for most of their history, they printed journals and textbooks. Their audience are professionals, lawyers, accountants, doctors, etc. Obviously, over the last 20 years, they've been transforming themselves into more, initially kind of a digital publishing company, but now they're transforming themselves into a software and solutions company. And while much of their business is today, sort of cloud-based, sustainable revenue, they also had significant revenue that is transactional. And as the business climate fundamentally changed, as you and Mark were just talking about back in March, they were looking at the fact that, they were going to see huge downside potentially in that transactional business. But one of the things that this company has going for it is great, I think, culture in terms of innovation and risk-taking and looking for opportunity. And so one of the things that they were able to do when the government announced the PPP loans for small businesses, this company already has relationships with banks through their GRC business, and especially with the more community-oriented banks. And they were able within 2 weeks to roll out a program to allow those banks to enroll their customers in the PPP program and get them all set up and get things moving forward. And that to me is, and so this of course, was a revenue event for the company, but it was an example of how the culture in the company that really supported that notion of innovation and risk-taking and looking for opportunity was really, truly able to deliver something that was of value, to a huge number of companies across the US. So it's a great story, I think.
And then in terms of winning, how important is the culture of winning in business?
I think it is, culture in general is hugely important. Now, it depends on what your company is. I think everybody has a definition of winning, right? You want to be successful. So let's just say success rather than win. And I think that sort of the culture of being able to say the employees are empowered, to make decisions and to take things on, and to be able to sort of define what success means in their own little part of the company and not always having to push everything upstairs, I think is hugely, hugely important.
Excellent. Hey, Jeanette, stay with us. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Next up, we have Marcus Session. Marcus is the VP of IT of Tampa International Airport, also the president of the Tampa chapter. Hey, Marcus, great to see you.
Hey, nice to see you again, Hunter. How you doing?
Marcus, you do get the HMG and I think Sim Connect Speaker of the Year Award recognition program. Marcus is amazing storyteller, has amazing communication skills. So come on, lay a good story for us for right now. Put you on the spot, reimagine the business, leading and innovating in times of radical change. You're up.
All right. Well, Hunter, let me tell you, if you want to do this, right, you want to lead through radical change, the work starts before that. You can't start when you're in the fire, right? So you need to have a fire extinguisher. So look at it this way. What we did for the pandemic, I'll use that as an example because that's what the times we're in right now. I've been at the airport for 4 years. When I came there 4 years ago, what I've been saying is I looked at the landscape and I said, we need to get to this point. And I just tried to backfill from there based on the culture of the organization and what tools I had available to me. Sure, I could hire other people, but there were some tools that were going to be there. So I created my plan for that so I could figure out how to get there. Now, I've been pushing. We need to move to the cloud. People think these things are just innate in organizations. They're not. Everyone's not in the cloud. There are people, I was on a call the other day, there are people still using AIX and systems that IBM mainframes for some fairly large organizations, which is interesting, but that's another story. What I did was talk from a culture perspective to people. Instead of trying to just push them over the hill and say, hey, we're just going to ram it in, I gave them the why. And I said, at some point, if we don't move, the organization is not going to survive. We have to provide value to the business. That's what we're here for. We need to align ourselves with the business. And that's what we did. We talked to the business. I went and met with every leader. I think I had 70 meetings my first 3 or 4 weeks there, 1 hour meetings with the business. Hey, what do you like about IT? What don't you like? What's working? What's not working? Hey, what's your vision, by the way? So all that is things we should do anyway. That's going to set you up so you can innovate and sort of sustain during times of radical change. So once the pandemic hit, everything I had been saying, it was like I was the guy out there with the sign saying the comet's gonna hit the planet in 2020. It happened. And everybody said, oh my God, Marcus, you were right. And we went literally from basically our on-prem, not working from home model. I had started all these pilots, work from home pilot. I started a pilot for mobile devices with docking stations. I started a pilot with people in the cloud. I started a pilot with Microsoft Teams, all these different things. I called everything a pilot so they didn't feel there was permanence to it. We went from that mode of our normal working operating mode to fully remote pandemic, whole organization, 75% of the people working remotely in the airport still open and operating in 3 days. I only had to order 40 laptops, Hunter, because we already had the laptop staged. Preparation is key. even though you don't know when radical change is going to happen. It's going to hit you unpredictably. So you can still prep for it. You know, people laugh at doomsday preppers, right? Hey, one day the earth's going to end, but this guy has 1,000 eggs in his basement. Maybe you don't need 1,000 eggs. Maybe you don't need 1,000, but having 100, you're eventually going to eat them. So maybe that's a good thing to do. We had laptops staged. We had other things staged. We had licensing. We had all the things in place preparing for the change. And here's the reason why I prepared for it, Hunter, because I knew eventually the change was going to happen. You have to have the confidence that your plan is going to work. So when the opportunity presents itself, you can flip that switch and the innovation happens. Preparation is key. Have your plan, work it forward. And then when the opportunity comes, you seize it. Now, the whole organization, they can't get enough of working from home. They're asking me for more tools. I actually have to turn off the funnel. I'm saying no to projects now because the demand is so high. So these opportunities, you only get a few of these in your career where you have a chance to put in and change and take a disruption and flip it to a positive. It's preparation. And just like Jeanette said, you have to speak truth to power, be prepared, have confidence and courage that your plan and what you're going to do is the right thing. If you don't do that, you don't lay the groundwork, you're going to run into chaos. You're going to call Dell up and say, hey, Dell, I need 100 laptops. And Dell's going to tell you, hey, I just had 5 million laptops ordered from this other company. I'll put you in the queue. We didn't have to do that because we staged and we prepared. So that's what I would tell people, Hunter, is that to deal with this change, prepare, work your plan, have confidence and courage that it's going to work. That's how you move it forward. That's how you innovate during radical change.
Love it. Love it. Great job. Thanks, Marcus. Stay with us. We'll be back here in just a second. Next up is Rodney Kenyon. Rodney's the Group Vice President, Global Oracle Applications and Support at Rimini Street. Hey, Rodney, you work on a global platform and a global organization. You guys have been working anywhere, from home and from anywhere for a long, long time, right, Rodney?
Very long time, yes. It was actually interesting when we all this pandemic started. We were really helping our customers figure out how they can all work from home. So it was a rather interesting shift. Most of our customers are working, on-prem at their office buildings, working in IT. So it was very transformational for them, something that we've been doing for a very, very long time.
Hey, so Rimini Street is really unique in the context of global ERP, more or less, right? So every tech exec, mid-cap or large cap, probably has flavor A or B over the last 30 years, right, Jeanette? Either SAP or Oracle is probably 90% of the market. Well, then there's support and service and maintenance and true-ups and contracts and so forth. Rimini Street is really unique in the context of, Rodney?
Well, we're unique in terms that, so we provision support for these ERP applications for half the cost of what the software providers are providing. So, and there's additional savings beyond that. So as this pandemic occurred, right, very first thing that people are looking at is, first of all, I need to reduce my costs, right? I'm looking at cost reductions. A lot of our customers, when you're talking about courage and taking risks, a lot of them had a lot of courage. They had to do some things that were unnatural, right? They had to do some things that required them to, reduce their need for labor to support these systems. And they asked us to step in and provision them more support, right, to help them overcome some of these challenges. So it's an interesting dynamic that we see these our customer base and even our prospects trying to figure out, what am I going to do to move the needle for my company. So we're dealing with a lot of back office applications, payroll and general ledger, et cetera. But a lot of customers were having issues with their supply chain. And they're having issues with, keeping their supply chain up and running, not really from a technology perspective at all, but how am I going to acquire my goods that I need for my production needs? And so there's a lot of trying to figure out how am I going to use technology to solve some of these challenges that I have now. And it's different technologies that they're using. It's not necessarily these investment in ERP applications, but it's investments in, where do I pivot to new revenue streams? And how am I going to take that? And I think that the organizations that we see, a lot of when the going gets tough, the tough get going, so to speak, a lot of innovation. I think Mark talked about it earlier. There's been a tremendous amount of innovation that's happened in IT. And, Mark mentioned like projects going from 6 months to 60 hours. There was a lot of push and pull to try to get things done and done quickly. I think what I personally seen is kind of a doubling down and a desire to maybe sweat these assets a little bit longer than we had originally seen. And I think that that's a result of really, cost cutting measures. But I also think that there's a bit of a shift that's occurring in terms of, do I really need to continue to make these investments in these ERP landscapes that I've already committed so many millions of dollars to? How can I let those assets continue to live and survive? And how do I sweat those assets as long as I can without having necessarily to upend my HR system or my financial system or my supply chain systems? So we're trying to help our customers, sweat those assets a little bit longer, use them in kind of new and innovative ways. They're not the end all be all, and some of our customers are having a lot of challenges in revenue, and they're trying to figure out what are the new revenue streams that they need to pivot towards, and hopefully we're going to see a lot more innovation in the months and the years to come. I think as a result of this, I don't think that this engine is really going to stop. I think it's going to continue forward for quite some time.
Hey, Rodney, thanks for the comments, and we really appreciate your support of today's summit. Great company.
Thanks, Hunter.
We'll be back to you in just a minute. Hey, next up we have Chris Gates. Chris is the Group CIO and Senior Vice President, Hosting Services at Allstate. Chris, we've been going back and forth, collaborating for over a decade together.
Yeah, it's been a great run, Hunter. Really enjoy the partnership, and I think as I've always told you, I think a lot of the success I've been able to achieve in my career has really been through partnership with you and organizations like SIM that helped me get connected. So I appreciate the opportunity to give back today and look forward to what kind of question you're going to ask.
Well, I got some written up questions here submitted. How about this? How has the pandemic impacted innovation or changed your approach to innovation?
It's a great question. I'll tell you, I think it's actually accelerated us. Marcus talked a little bit about it, and Jeanette talked about culture around how people rise in time of crisis. And I think you told me at one point in time, you never let a good crisis go to waste. And through this pandemic, we saw a lot of, we got exposed in some of our manual processes we had, and we saw some white gaps. That we had an opportunity for technology to really streamline and drive a tremendous amount of efficiencies and ultimately value back to our customers through what we were doing with some of our labs and how we were deploying software. I think the culture to have courage to be able to do that and lead from every chair and the impact that we're expecting from our individual contributors that are developing has been a big help for us. And I think the one thing that's helped us, Hunter, unlock value this year and what we've changed is we've focused on something that we call internally technology quotient, the TQ, right? We've all been raised with the concept of IQ and EQ, which is the intelligence and the softer side of the emotional quotient. But the technology quotient is something that I think this pandemic has accelerated. It's important for all business leaders and all IT leaders to really have a good acumen around what technology is, how we talk about it, how we leverage it. And when you educate your community, and we've put together very strong internal campaigns of awareness for all of our executives, so that they can now reflect back on the processes they own and help us understand how to approach them differently, how to come up with more compelling backlogs and feature sets that we want to do for internal and external. So I think the concept of technology quotient is probably the one thing, Hunter, in the focus on educating our business partners and our IT folks with a common vernacular. It's probably been the biggest single change we've done this year that's helped us accelerate.
But isn't innovation really core now to the tech leader, the CIO and CTO in the C-suite in the boardroom, and helping the company really visualize new business models, new go-to-markets? You've done that at Allstate.
Absolutely, Hunter. And it's, I don't think it's unique to Allstate. I think every company, aspires to be a technology firm, and maybe someday, Mark, we'll all move to Austin, Texas, and hang out with you and all your good buddies there. But But yeah, I think at Allstate, we've got 13 different brands. And I think it's important for technology to unlock the value, right? It's not the world we lived in 3 or 4 years ago. It's a much different world. The velocity, the expectations that customers have, just due to their experience with their personal devices. They're expecting a seamless and a frictionless engagement with my company and with any of the companies on the call today. And we've got to find a way to deliver that for them.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for making it and being such a great friend for so many years. Hey, Mark, what do we have in the chat? Anything interesting coming in?
Yeah, we do. A couple of things here. One, I want to go back to a comment that Marcus kind of breezed over earlier, Marcus, and then a question for you. You talked about positioning a change as a pilot. And I think what you're doing is in that making it consumable, making it easy for people to go, okay, I don't have to change everything. We're just going to test this out. And I got to tell you, that's a brilliant tactic. And I think it's a great skill and a great tactic to employ in any time you're going through massive change in an organization and you have the time to do it. We all didn't necessarily have time in the last several months. We had to just make it happen. But I really think that was brilliant. I didn't want to miss that. Hey, the other thing was you mentioned that you've got so much volume, Marcus, that you're having to say no to some folks. And so the question is, how do you decide who to say no to? And are you losing any additional value because you're having to say no?
So you're correct about, the how you say no question, right? And I would frame it as that, I don't really say no. I say maybe not right now, but when. Most organizations now have IT governance. And several years ago, that was the big thing. You got to have IT governance, blah, 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 right? But every organization can be implemented very differently. And the way we have done it is we've set it up as kind of, I don't want to call it a knife fight, but essentially we set it up and we bring the business partners together and say, hey, we're IT. We are the tool that helps to bring you value with technology. Now, before those meetings were kind of, okay, yeah, that's great. You guys are doing all these things. This is cool. Yeah, awesome. Okay, hey, you guys do awesome lunches. Now, these meetings, especially the virtual now, has turned into, well, hey, what about my thing? The discussions have become more substantive now because people are now relying on us as, before it was like, hey, IT's cool. They can give you these great things. And now it's like, whoa, we need this stuff to now move forward. The CEO wants these things. He wants to see these new innovations. And so now we're like a business critical. Everybody's rushing to the fray. So now we just prioritize it against it. And it's pretty simple. We've taught them how to forecast. We've taught them how to prioritize. And when they come and say, hey, I need this, we say, hey, this project is going to take about 18 months to do. Here are the resources. Here's the priority list. You already have this project as number 3. Is this more important than the one you already have here? Well, no. Okay, well, you get it here, right? So we actually have taught them some of these things that we do innately in IT and expanded it to the business. And there's one other thing to that real quick. Hunter just mentioned something about innovation and the CIO being the leader. In most organizations, you're kind of taking that role naturally. What we've done is, so what tends to happen is when I bring something forward, everybody says, oh, here comes Marcus. Let me take out my wallet. Okay, it's going to cost me millions of dollars. So they get blinded by that. And I have, good relationships. Everybody generally, hey, Marcus generally has good ideas. It's probably pretty good. But I wanted to highlight the business units that need this. I was like, look, I could turn all this stuff off and it's not going to affect my business. I'll just have less to support. So what I've done is I bring the business unit and say, hey, look, I'm just helping to facilitate. This is really operations project. We think it's fantastic and wonderful. It's going to help us with the FAA. I think we should do it, right? And I give that backing and they feel good because they get a win, but then the focus is on them. They're doing the presentations. We help them set up. So we've taught everybody to almost do their own little Shark Tanks, be their own little advocates. And we're centralizing innovation in the organization with us kind of helping to teach that so that it's not just IT. Because innovation, there's one innovation that happened at an airport. It cost $6,000, but it changed the maintenance department. It was literally putting wheels on a ladder. A maintenance guy did it. And it was because they used to, for large ladders, they used to have to take 2 people in a truck to do it. And they were like, this is a waste of 2 people. The guy said, if I just put wheels on it, I can get it off and do it myself. That saved them the efficiency. And it was $6,000 and it had nothing to do with technology. So innovation, we're trying to make it where it's think about it from a process and culture perspective and not just a technology perspective.
Boy, Marcus, that's brilliant. And I think what I heard in there actually is there's a discipline to innovation to truly get it rooted into the organization. There's a discipline, prioritization, all the things that you mentioned. And you also got to something Jeanette mentioned a little while ago, and that was empowerment of employees, the team being empowered to innovate in the space in which they have knowledge, and that there's something tremendous and powerful about that. Hunter, I see that we're near the bottom of the hour. I passed the bottom of the hour. Do we have time for another question, or do we need to roll into the next panel?
We have 5 more minutes. I have a question mark for Jeanette, and it's a real good one. How have discontinuities in technology opened up new business opportunities?
That's actually a really interesting question. And I think it's an area where anybody who's a technology related person can help in the business. You know, so often we've thought of technology as being productivity improvements, you know, but now I think a lot of the focus is on how technology can be used to actually open up new business models. And I think if you think about something like the various AI technologies that are so hot today, a lot of people say, well, you know, hey, they've been around forever. You know, 20 years ago, people were talking about AI, you know, and all the hype and all the rest of that. But to me, around AI, there's a couple of things that were the big discontinuities in it. It wasn't the AI technologies themselves. It's the fact that, first of all, processors became faster. Secondly, memory became effectively free and storage became unlimited. And those 3 things all of a sudden allowed the extremely resource hungry AI algorithms to be usable for companies, for real companies, not just for, you know, defense agencies and national labs, etc. And I think that with those advances in technology, now a lot of companies are kind of looking at, well, wait a moment, how can I use that for my business advantage? And how can I really think about it? What kind of data sources do I have? And how can I mine that data and make it more useful? And some of them, like, you know, RPA, obviously, you know, as a discipline today, is really still focused on, you know, more productivity. But I think the most interesting, you know, opportunities are around the revenue generating ideas that come from it.
Excellent. Wow. That's a lot. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Really good insights. You know, Chris, when you think of what are the hot technologies that you're betting on, is AI one of them?
Absolutely. I think AI and how it shows up in the marketplace used to be in our data center, but it's now available through several of our strategic partners in SaaS offerings. And it's allowing us to take some of the applications Marcus talks about with mainframe or AIX and really make them cool again, right? Because we're able to bring some new insight into just a treasure trove of data, and finding that way of bringing that together with your legacy portfolio is worth some time to spend thinking about if you're an IT leader.
Awesome. Excellent. Hey, Rodney, when you think of the 2 or 3 things or ideas that you want people to take away from today's panel, what are those?
Well, I think Jeanette started us off at courage. I think that's a prerequisite, I think, for all of us, right? We need to be able to be courageous and be able to take risks. And I think the other thing is, you know, we didn't really talk about this a lot, but I do think that we need better agility in our IT investments, right? I think that's something that came out of the past 9 months, is that some of the investments that we made, they weren't agile. We thought that they were, but they really weren't as agile as we needed them to be. And when speed is important, their shortcomings become rather evident. And the other thing is, like, if you're leveraging your existing asset base, you know, sweat those assets. I know I'm the guy from Rimini Street. I am a big proponent of continuing to sweat those assets as long as you can. Those investments that you've made, they're long-standing investments. And really, in this time and age, we really need to focus our attention on, you know, we were just talking about revenue generating investments, how technology can unleash some areas and some opportunities for companies in those areas as well. That's kind of what I would walk away with today.
Excellent. Hey, Rodney, great time to be in technology.
Fantastic time, I think.
Awesome. Excellent. Jeanette, final comment. Great time to be in technology.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I think Chris said it, kind of everybody's becoming a technology company, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what your business is, technology is becoming front and center. And actually, I will sort of wrap here with something that you asked me at the beginning around, like, being a board member. There's more demand for technology people on boards these days because every company is becoming a technology company. So it's a great place to be.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeanette. Hey, Marcus, best time to be a tech professional?
Yes, it is. The customers are becoming more self-aware. Demand is increasing. They realize now it's a necessity and not kind of an extra. And to Jeanette's point, I've been asked to be on 2 boards in the last 6 months. So what she's saying is true. People are getting self-aware, so it's coming.
Very cool. Good job, Marcus. Chris, final word?
Yeah, Connor, I don't think there's a better time in history to be part of IT and technology and with all the change going on. And I would just encourage everybody on the phone, the one shout out you gave to Marcus around his ability to tell a story. As IT leaders, you got to be able to tell a story, stitch it together, make it come to life for your business partners and for your team members. And you're going to write your own chapter, and it's going to be a great period. So yeah, I think it's great, Hunter.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. And I see a comment from Tim Crawford saying, great panel. Hey, Mark, great job, right?
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Let's keep it rolling.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Hopefully you can stay for the whole summit. Next up, we have Ashwath Nagaraj from, he's a CTO and founder of Aryaka Networks. Ashwath, great to see you.
Yeah, good morning. Good to meet you, Hunter. And I listened to the last panel. It seemed to be really, really interesting things to hear about.
We've done an interview before. I'm very familiar with your company. I love your company. Tell us a little bit at a high level for 30 seconds, what's unique about Aryaka? What do you do differently out there that you'd like people to remember?
I would say that we're your WAN transformation partner. And when I say WAN transformation, I don't mean just your MPLS connectivity between sites. I don't mean just your security at a box at the edge. We're your partner. We'll help you with your WAN transformation. And as we know, WAN transformation has now become really critical, especially as a result of this pandemic. We're there to help you.
Why has it become so hot now with this increased threat landscape? Everything changed overnight 9 months ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the challenges people faced when the pandemic hit, they seem to have been prepared for some amount of work from home, some amount of capacity for people to do various things out of the cloud and so on and so forth. But what happened was the immensity of it caught everybody off guard. And by immensity, I mean 100% of your employees have to work remotely. Where's the capacity? Are people able to even get remote access? I mean, internet at home, because some of these people come to the office every day and they never had enough internet capacity at home. It took them 2 months to do that. So it took, I would say, 2 to 3 months for people to actually adapt to to getting everybody working again, right? And what did that do? That sort of moved to the security perimeter. Now it just changed your security perimeter. You had a LAN and a perimeter. Now you have a WAN, and WAN is the new LAN. So you think about it, the perimeter is it's global. It just completely changed the perimeter. So that's another reason why people had to very quickly adapt.
So Ashwath, you must be really killing it right now.
I think that transitions help us. And I'm happy to say that, yes, a lot of our customers, when they were working with us, we were able to help them make this transition really smooth, because part of being a managed service also is making sure that your network is managed remotely. As a result of which, you don't, when customers have their users starting to move home, we just were able to transfer the capacity of the users from their branches to be able to access our points of presence remotely. And yes, absolutely. So I think we've had a good run as a result. Obviously, we have to work with customers. Some customers, the challenge of getting the manufacturing facilities back online and all, it took a couple of months, but now it's back. It's really taking off.
Hey, Ashwath, you're unique in that you're a CTO and founder. That's a really unique individual in our industry. And what can enterprise tech execs take away from you as it relates to your journey and what you've been passionate about your whole life and being a founder, and the problem you're looking to solve in the context of the enterprise?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, it's almost philosophical, I guess, right? I mean, sometimes you look at a company and say you want to grow it and do well and, exits and so on and so forth. But I think when we started Aryaka, it was a point in time when we had very good, very solid networks, MPLS, and I'm talking of enterprise network where productivity and network quality were tied together. You didn't get good productivity without a good network, right? But the world was changing. It was getting more agile. But the agility brought with it security problems, performance optimization, et cetera, problems, right? And I think when we set out, we said that we want to transform the network and provide our customers, our people, a new network, right? And I think we've stayed true to that course. And as a CTO, I really feel that there's some amount of refinement of direction, but you really wait for that almost a killer app, if you will, right? And I think what's happened actually is the pandemic, in a negative, in a bizarre or morbid sense almost, right, is a killer app. In the sense that what's happened is all of these enterprises who had this plan to transition, to transform, but were taking their time. Now suddenly a fire is being lit under them, right? They have to transform fast. But what's also happened is that in the short period of time, what they did, many of them have made Band-Aid or temporary fixes, right? And for us as a company and for our vision, how do we get people back into the fold where there is an opportunity to make a sort of homogeneous world with a new network with the old characteristics without saying, I'm going to do a hodgepodge. I have to put remote access. Okay, I want to stick in some cloud-based remote access. Now my security model broke. Okay, let me patch it here. Get the money out of other things. Okay, I've got to stop my campus planning. It's been a little confusing, but I think what comes out of that cloud at the end for us is clarity, that the direction forward is pretty clear.
And the direction, when you think about it, most folks, it's a cloud first strategy, right? So what does it look like to you and what's your advice there?
Yeah, so cloud first strategy to me is really, it's a hybrid world. It's got more of a hybrid world. It's not just about Amazon or AWS, Azure, and so on. It's not just about Office 365. The environment was hybrid because it had data centers, branches, manufacturing facilities, and now you added the complexity of users, right? So in this new hybrid world, right, with applications moving from your enterprise to the cloud, I think that the number one piece of advice I'd have to people is that you need a partner, and a partner who actually understands all the aspects of this perimeter, right? It's not just the branch, it's not just the core network, it's not just the cloud edge, it's the home user, it's the security for everybody. I think step back and look at a more holistic way of deploying your new network rather than the Band-Aid we've done. There's also a lot of funding available because you look at the transformation, what has it resulted in? People are shutting down their big, expensive facilities because there's nobody working in it. I mean, I went to our office in Bangalore and there was one person in the office, the security guard. It's a 300-person office. What does it say? We're working well, and we didn't actually need the office as much as we thought we did. So what does that mean? I mean, it's really the financing required for this transformation. The financing that was not there has suddenly become available. So I say, look at it that way. That finances your holistic strategy for the future.
Ashwath, very thoughtful comments, and a real thoughtful final question here. We're beginning to read about the roaring 20s, expecting a strong economic growth on the back of this pandemic. How can CIOs be prepared with their organization to take advantage of this new growth forecast?
I think that's right now we've managed to stem the impact of the pandemic on industries to a large extent. I'm not talking small businesses, they're still suffering and so on, but when we talk about the manufacturing sites and so on, they're back to being humming, plants and people are working again. The problem though, is that there's a lot of stuff that's been put together haphazardly because there wasn't much time to do it. I think I would say that to prepare for this big ramp, we need to step back and consolidate your model and make a decent plan. Because if you get stuck in this model of saying, okay, I'm going to continue with my party A remote access, party B a security, party C cloud strategy, you're going to have security breaches and so on that you have to start thinking about, because this is a hacker's dream. Every house, every user at home is now a doorway into your enterprise. You've got to keep that in mind. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I'd say.
Fascinating. Hey, Mark, do you have one question from our audience?
Yeah, you know, there's interesting. There's a good one here that talks about the work from home strategy and the impact on it on the sales side of the equation. And Ashwath, I know that leading the company that you do, what's happening to your pipeline? Because the question from Brian is, do you see an erosion building as the sales pipelines may be reducing due to a lack of direct engagement on sales?
It's a very good question. I think I'm not a salesperson, so let me just say that right up front, right? What we have seen though, is that the need of people of large companies, small companies, mid-sized companies, all needing to make transformations happen fast has increased, right? So I'd say that maybe the sales model is going to change from one where you go and find people to another where people come and find you. And that comes more from, reputation, your customers being your references, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the ability to build character and build relationship over time and to draw those. I do think that there'll be a new skill set to be developed around engaging people in this type of environment in a way that's inviting and high value. That covers the questions that are in the till for the next for the time being. I would encourage everyone who's got a question to drop it into the Q&A area, and we can manage it there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Hey, Ashwath, great to see you. Great job. Great update. Folks, check out Aryaka. Great partner, great friend of HMG's and Sims. So thanks again, Ashwath.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, next up, we have David Bray. David's literally Dr. David Bray. David's been a great friend and partner of HMG for going on a decade now. Truly is a genius. He's the inaugural director, Global GeoTech Center and Commission of the Atlantic Council. And we're going to talk about you're surviving and thriving in 2021 and beyond. And audience Q&A is encouraged. Hey, David, good to see you.
Great to see you, Hunter, and great to be joining Celebrating SIM. And yes, do hope this is a lively Q&A. And of course, what's top of my mind is the story that broke this weekend that we've seen at least the Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Administration, NTIA, apparently all victims of what appear to be a very sophisticated, probably nation state based cybersecurity hack.
Give us more.
Oh, well, it's just a breaking story in which it appears that, as we know, that happened earlier this month, FireEye had a compromise on terms of their capabilities, and some things were exfiltrated. In the process of trying to look into how that happened, they discovered vulnerability with another product, another third-party product that was not associated with them. And it turns out that that product was in use in some of these government agencies. That product that was being used by the government agencies apparently had a backdoor that was being used by some very sophisticated actors that were very smart to not do any major movements that would be so obvious to a chief information security officer or a CIO. And they were actually so sophisticated that when they were trying to do the access, they actually pinpointed what would be the normal local access for the area. And they actually rented cloud services to basically do exfiltration. And so whoever was doing this was large, sophisticated, and organized. Some say it points to Russia, but it's pointing to at least Department of Commerce and Treasury. There's some concerns that it might also be Homeland Security, have had basically someone monitoring what's been going on in their network for quite some time.
So that's thanks for the update. Everything's safe and secure at DC. We got it, right?
Well, I think this points to everybody has to face the reality that as we add more layers of complexity, I mean, the biggest challenge to any type of cybersecurity, and I think this is great in terms of what was heard earlier, complexity is the biggest challenge to making sure things are secure. And especially when you're dealing with sophisticated nation state actors that do have access to tools that are not necessarily readily available to all of us, one has to assume that it's really not a question of if or when you're going to have an exfiltration, that you may actually already have an exfiltration going on and you may just not even know about it.
Hey, Dave, this is serious. We've been talking about it at HMG now for going on 14 years with Israel Martinez was an early kind of a canary in the coal mine idea. How big of an industry is this whole cyber warfare? Is it in the trillions of dollars?
Oh, it's in the trillions of dollars, and it's been going on, like you said, it's at least 2 decades, if not longer. I mean, it's basically as soon as the internet started to be rolled out to the commercial space and civilian space, there were some actors that said, oh, this is an interesting opportunity. I do see one of the questions in the chat that was already asked, are all solar wind clients at risk? It does appear, yes, that you should be concerned and you should take a look at it seriously. I would follow up with them directly. I think it does point to that we're also needing to recognize that there are tiers of sophistication, in particular that these are nation state actors that basically one should assume they can do things that most of us aren't even tracking or aware of. So if you don't already have a relationship with your FBI, develop a relationship with your local FBI, because again, they can help provide information and give things in context that you may not know and be able to see. But the cyber war has been happening, is continuing. And if anything, it's now crossing over from just doing hardware and software to the realm of misinformation, disinformation. The last 5 years, I've been behind the scenes working with Special Operations Command, publicly with VentSurf at the People Center and Internet. We are seeing that now you don't even necessarily have to do anything. You just have to give the innuendo that something happened or even take things out of context. And this can be very damaging to a company's reputation as well.
Thanks, David. Hey, Mark, I see an interesting question from Nelson Burns.
Yeah, it really is. How can companies work together to fight cybercrime?
Yes, well, I think the first thing is companies, wherever possible, work with your FBI, work with your local contacts there. InfoGuard, if you're not a member of InfoGuard, be a member of InfoGuard. I do think what we need to recognize, though, is increasingly companies need to find a way to not reveal any trade secrets or intellectual property or privacy of information. But if we are all trying to protect our own castles individually, then we're only going to be aware of what's hitting our castles individually. If we can find some way to increase sharing our threat information, and it needs to be in a way that's not just relying on human to human, although that's a good way to build trust, we need to actually do this at net speed. And so what I would love to see is almost like an immune system for the digital world where we're allowing companies, again, not revealing any proprietary information, not revealing anything that's sensitive to your company or anything like that, not putting your company at risk, but finding some way to de-identify wherever possible, but share, we're seeing these types of threats, is anyone else seeing it? And just an example that we're seeing this weekend where government has discovered something, now the commercial sector needs to take a look at it as well. I think this points to everything that we need to be thinking about.
Hey, David, we met you in DC with our friends, the Capital Area Sim chapter, and we've known each other for a long, long time. Give everyone a little context, how you started in this space. You were a CIO, right?
Yes.
And then what you're passionate about right now in terms of innovation and helping the enterprise CIO figure out what matters.
Yeah, so short version, I fell on my head at an early age. Started working with the US government when I was 15, initially at a physics facility doing computer models in the 90s. Then later working with small satellites in 1995 as part of the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization and finding civilian applications. Later, did spend time in the private sector with Microsoft and Yahoo, only to return back to what was called the Bioterrorism Preparedness Response Program at the CDC. This was in 2000. People said we didn't need to exist. Was actually scheduled weeks in advance to give a briefing to the CIA and the FBI on September 11th as to what we would do technology-wise should a bioterrorism event happen. Of course, when 9/11 actually occurred, we postponed that briefing, dealt with the response to 9/11 for 3 weeks, stood down from high alert on October 3rd, and actually gave a briefing that day to the CIA, only to have the first Gizmo strike show up 24 hours later. So very busy. Did spend 4 years as Chief Information Officer at the Federal Communications Commission, as I like to say, digital diplomat and human flak jacket was that role. And we actually took back in 2014, 2015, we took all of their systems. They had more than 207 systems. In 2.5 years, we moved them all to either public cloud or private hosting. So the FCC had nothing else on premise. It was all either managed or public cloud. And in the process, reduced our spend from being 85% of our budget to maintain and keep the O&M up for existing systems to being less than 35%. And so that actually gave us the freedom on a flat budget to do new innovation. What I'm passionate about now is recognizing that technology and data is now changing the world at such a rate that it's become a geopolitical issue. And I think it's sort of like, again, the ascension of, we heard earlier from folks talking about how CIOs are now having their moment to actually inform boards. Boards are recognizing that every company is a digital company and it needs to be, your mission is about going digital. It's also recognizing that we're having disproportionate impacts that are impacting what nation states do and what nation states are doing to each other. Again, just this example of what looks to be like a nation state attack on the US government using a commercial product. But then just look at what's also happened this year. You've got TikTok, you've got WeChat, you've got Huawei, now increasingly becoming sort of controversies between the United States and China. If anything, CIOs and CEOs need to be ready for IT increasingly becoming a geopolitical tug of war between Europe, the United States, and China.
And you have some news regarding Europe's interest to be more diplomatic with, more integrated with the US, right?
Exactly. That's the most exciting thing that's probably happened in the last 2.5 weeks. That's a source of hope and good news is, whereas I'd say the last, probably since the last 8 years, the relationship between Europe and the United States over technologies, particularly digital technologies involving IT, has been kind of tenuous at best. They're concerned, and rightly so, they're concerned about privacy, but they also want to see innovation happen in Europe. What's interesting is now that we are looking to 2021 and the new administration coming in with the Biden administration, Europe has been very forthright and coming forward saying they want to engage in a tech relationship, a tech alliance between the United States and Europe. And so they're actually talking about how they can actually help provide R&D funding to actually give growth to new companies. And they actually want to think about how Europe and the United States can present a new way of working together digitally that demonstrates open societies can survive, that is almost a counter to China, where China is, of course, more autocratic. You don't have privacy rights, you don't have intellectual property rights. And by the way, if the Chinese government wants, they're going to go to you like they went to Jack Ma and say, you have a choice. You either choose to retire or we retire you. And so I think this is going to be interesting to watch this space in terms of what does Europe and the United States do in 2021? Does the governments of both Europe and the United States put money towards stimulus funding to actually have this new tech revolution happen between Europe and the United States?
Mark, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, there's a couple of great questions, Hunter, that have surfaced up. First one from Michelle Piazza. Dr. Bray, can you speak to the liability that Firefly and other firms have since the bad actors stole pen tests and other client confidential information? And she's saying with respect to cybersecurity insurance.
Right. Well, so I'm not a lawyer, so I probably am not the best person to ask legal questions. I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to play one on television. I think what we need to be talking about is less about liability and what can we learn at the appropriate speed and adaptation necessary. Because I think as CIOs, we know our business is about managing risk. I tell people, if you want to have no risk whatsoever, unplug yourself from the internet, bury your systems underground and make sure no human being touches that. But obviously you can't do commerce, you can't do the operations necessary. And so what I really think about is, can we always be learning from each other and demonstrate that we're learning new things as opposed, I think liability is a term that should be done. If you do the same mistake over and over and over again, then that's just gross negligence. But beyond that, I'm less about pointing fingers and more about, can we share the lessons learned and adapt quickly as CIOs? And that's where, again, I think we need to come up with a combination of both what SIM is doing, bringing CIOs together, bringing CISOs together to share information. But we've got to figure out a way to do this at that speed, which means we got to figure out some automated ways as well. And what I would like to see, and I'm seeing a lot of startups and companies get into the space where the machine learning is done as to the initial threats on the digital side, and then that tips and cues the CIO and the CISO to pay attention to certain things.
Hey, Hunter, we got Daniel Gorecki and Eric Gorham that are answering questions in the Q&A around the specific versions of SolarWinds that were affected. Ironic, Dr. Bray, isn't it, that SolarWinds was just sold? Another Austin connection, by the way, Hunter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this actually points to, I would say, just for CIO's awareness of the geopolitics. Oftentimes the news stories you see, there's a deeper story that's going on that doesn't get covered. There literally are nation state actors who may not be doing it through their government apparatus, but these may be people who work for their government that freelance on the side, that essentially are sanctioned to either buy or short a stock and then do some event. And so you can imagine right now, if someone bought SolarWinds and then shorted their stock and then had this event happen, they've probably made a lot of money just because their stock has seen a temporary blip. And then of course it'll come back up later. But this is how people are making money, is they're using a combination of cyber means as well as misinformation means to manipulate price fluctuations. And of course, this is where I raise for CIOs and CISOs, which is who in your company is on point when a misinformation attack happens. And I think the CIO has a place at the table alongside the CEO in marketing and legal, because oftentimes misinformation is spread through social media, it goes viral. And as we know, the biggest way to spread viral things on the internet is either through anger or hate. And when you're trying to come out and say, no, this is the real story, this is what actually happened, you're usually trying to play catch up and it's already gone halfway around the world.
Hey, David, any update on the Google outage the other day? Was that cyber related?
Unclear. Google hasn't really shared too much information. I imagine they will when they can on time. But it does seem to be, if anything, I would say, and this is purely at the point of right now, possibility but not confirmed, that it does seem like nation state actors want to pile on, particularly during the holidays when they think people are going to be out or things like that, with cyber events, and whatever they can do to create the concerns that somehow there's either lack of legitimacy with the US elections or lack of what's going on. This is interesting, a challenge that's going on. I would also say that aside from thinking about Google and everything that's going on in cybersecurity, one of the trends, and one of the positive trends I would raise for CIOs and CISOs is who in your company is thinking about using commercial space capabilities? And unless that sounds too far-fetched, I'm seeing already, and this is sort of the silent thing that's been happening in 2020 behind COVID-19 and the pandemic, companies are launching the ability for you to have access to anywhere on the planet, 15 minutes or less, a real-time photo at 25 centimeter resolution. And that's not just visual spectrum. You can also do hyperspectral. So you can assess the acidity, the dryness of the conditions of the soil. You could even actually say what rare earth minerals are underneath this soil. So you can actually do some interesting prospecting from space as well. Unless it sounds far-fetched, we know over the last 5 years, hedge funds have used counting cars in parking lots to predict which stores are doing well, which stores are not doing well. I would raise that because if you as a CEO are not coming to your CEO with thinking about how I can use space capabilities to actually improve our business, now is the time that you should be doing this, because now is the time to reinvent your business models.
Love it. Hey, David, we talk a lot about leadership and career ascent and being a talent magnet, having a brand in our industry, and being a great communicator, storyteller, which you are amazing. Any thoughts or tips for CIOs on that softer side of the leadership equation?
Right. I think the biggest thing right now that I'm hearing is empathy and learning. And so if you can demonstrate that in your storytelling, you're having empathy for those that either may be experiencing the disruption impacted by tech or your customers. I'm hearing increasingly from different customers and user bases, they feel like technology is moving at such a high speed that they can't keep up with it. And I know we as CIOs and CISOs, we often are excited about, here's what it can do. But I think having empathy for those that feel frustrated, like, I just want to get it to work, or I feel like it's changing so fast, there's so much disruption happening, I think that's going to be useful. And then I also think, again, that always be learning mode, because we are at a pace in which changes are not happening linearly, they're actually happening exponentially. I think that's going to be so key for a CIO and a CISO to demonstrate that they can help the organization have the empathy, but also have the learnability, if I can make up a word, to keep up with the changes that are happening. And I would say to everyone, if you thought 2020 was disruptive, I hope I'm wrong, but I think 2021 is actually going to be even more disruptive.
And what are those disruptions that we should be looking out for?
Right. Well, so just from a US perspective, we always know that the most turbulent time, generally when things go interesting and go bump in the night in the world, is the next 6 months after a new president comes into office. Both countries that are adversaries as well as countries that are friendly know this. And so they think they can do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do, because we're still trying to get people into positions. We're still trying to figure out who's on first, what's on second. And so it's a time in which generally interesting things tend to happen. And so buckle up for that. But I think also, again, it's this idea that we're already part of this existing curve in which what COVID-19 did is it threw us 5 or 6 years into the future, but our souls and our minds haven't caught up with where we've been tossed. And so we're going to see both, one, hopefully the vaccines will play a role in getting past what has been the specter of COVID-19, but they're not going to get out to everybody right away. And so we're going to have to deal with logistics issues. We're going to have to deal with those who have it, those who do not, cold storage issues. How do we start to phase back, going back to work? That's going to be messy. And then finally, the fact that IT is becoming a geopolitical issue, you're going to see increasing tensions, not just between nation states, but between large corporations that are transnational in nature, saying, yes, we want to work with you, but you may be too punitive, or you may be trying to apply regulations that just don't make sense, given that a lot of IT is global in nature. And so that's where I'm hopeful that we can establish this coalition of digital democracies and work together. But again, you're looking at what China's doing, you're looking at Russia's doing. The reality is, if you're an autocratic nation right now, you can move faster than the more democratic nations can.
Coming into the holidays here and Christmas time, what should be on the enterprise CIO tech leaders shopping list? What kind of technology?
So beyond space technologies, again, I would say right now, form a very small agile team to do just, give them 3 months to say, what can you come back to my company with? And what you can actually make a pitch as to how we could use space technologies to actually improve our business. The next thing I would say is computer vision. We often talk about AI and the subset of AI, including machine learning and even deeper neural nets. But computer vision to me has gotten to a point, and I'm seeing companies apply what they call AI process controls. where you basically teach the machine what are the normal steps, whether it's in your manufacturing process or your service delivery process. And by teaching the machine what looks like is normal, then it can actually raise flags and say, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Is there a hardware issue? Is there a software issue? Or is someone doing a cybersecurity attack? I think this also points to the new model of cybersecurity that we need to do, which is actually recognizing that we've got to shift from cybersecurity thinking that it's just building deeper defenses and defense in depth to being, how do you lay sort of this idea of resiliency, whether it's resiliency because there has been a hardware or software issue, or resiliency because there's either an actual cyber attack or misinformation. Do that. Thanks,
David. Hey, Mark, I see there's a note from Mark Quintin regarding his book.
Yeah, I see that. He talks about the his new book, The Coming Cyber War, what executives aboard and you should know. The SolarWinds breach is what I'm warning of, and more to come.
Yep, and I would say actually, if anything, the cyber war is already going on. If anything, global conflict has gone invisible to most of us. It is in cyber realm, it is in the misinformation realm, it is in and even in the bio realm in some respects. But that just means that CIOs in some respects are at the front line of seeing this, again, because at least in the United States, we do separate our private sector from our public sector, and other actors know this, and they know that all they need to do is either take your intellectual property, or worse, short your stock, do an event, and then walk away with the profits that they made from this. It does point to that CIOs are really on the front line of this conflict.
Hey, David, it's always great to see you. You always blow me away. Mark, great job.
Yeah, fantastic, David. Great to meet you, and I really appreciate you investing your time with us today. The questions have been blowing up, and I'm getting even individual texts saying how much I appreciate.
Well, thank you, Mark, for everything that SIM does. Thank you, Hunter, for everything that HMD does. And to all the CIOs out there, be bold, be brave, be benevolent. Thank you.
Awesome. Be good. Thanks, Dave. Next up, we have Mark Polanski. Mark's the Senior Partner Technology Officers Practice at Ferry. Self-Disrupt or Be Disrupted, introducing the Self-Disruptive Leader. Mark, good to see you.
Well, it's great to be here, Hunter. Your audience may not know, but I've been a SIM member for over 25 years, former president and chairman of the New York Metro chapter, and still a very happy member today.
Awesome. Great stuff, right? And the SIM Connect and SIM International and the HMG partnership was 15 months in the making, maybe 20 years in the making, Mark, but you were instrumental or helpful there helping pull us together, Mark.
It was a pleasure. Labor of love.
Hey, so tell us about the Self-Disruptive Leader and the Korn Ferry Institute, the latest research from KFI.
So Korn Ferry Institute is our not-for-profit research arm. It's funded through the company, but all of its research results are available online to the public. And they conduct research into leadership, development, and personal career issues. And it's all available. This year, we thought we needed to do something very important about the ability to pivot, a word that we hear a lot this year, and to rededicate ourselves to the ability to change and the ability to adapt. And so the research goes that, of course, learning agility has always been number one, or at least one of the most important things to determine career success. But this year in particular, adaptability, flexibility, agility have become paramount for success. And we can kind of distinguish the winners and the not so winners from the COVID pandemic so far by those who have been successful in changing and pivoting. And so the Self-Disruptive Leader is a marketing title for this ability to change and pivot, to be flexible, and to think outside the box, all ideas that we're very familiar with. But the principle that one needs to disrupt oneself is kind of a different way of looking at it. And our premise was, if we can disrupt entire companies, certainly entire industries, and we all know the great examples, and we even think that we're disrupting entire countries, think India and Ireland and Eastern Europe, we certainly should be thinking about disrupting ourselves. And disrupting ourselves is all about this agility, this flexibility, to pivot and change, but it's mostly about getting outside one's own frame of reference, the proverbial thinking outside the box, and doing things differently and taking chances. And Hunter, you use the word often, I do as well, and the panelists this morning use the word courage. It takes courage to be self-disruptive, courage defined as stepping outside of one's comfort zone. If you're considering doing something bold and courageous and it hurts a little, or it gets you a little bit nervous, or gets you a little bit anxious, that's probably a good thing, especially in these times.
Interesting, right? You know, Mark, you do some amazing work, search work around the world with large and mid-sized companies, and you've been making placements for decades. What are you seeing now from your client community in terms of the profile of their next new tech leader that they're going to bring in to drive that kind of innovation agenda?
That is a great question. And we've been talking a lot about how the pandemic has accelerated technology transformation and business transformation. Well, the pandemic has also accelerated the path for the tech exec. CIOs now are being asked to do and expected to succeed like it was 2025. We skipped the first half of the 2020s, both in terms of digital transformation and personal transformation. And so what my clients are looking for is those that had success in winning the war against COVID, of course. And that's how my peers and I are interviewing differently today. And one of my very first questions is, so how did you make out for the last 9 months? What did you try that didn't work? What did you try that did work? How did you rebound from those that didn't work? And how did you capitalize on those ideas that did work and try to replicate them in other areas of your organization? So we're interviewing with a perspective on the last 9 months.
And what they're looking for in terms of an executive that can drive the digital agenda and that whole digital customer experience, reimagining and reinventing, helping facilitate, enable, and lead new business models, new go-to-market. Is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's changing the architecture. It's changing the applications layer. It's changing the business impact. It's changing the contribution to the leadership team and to the board. It's at every level, Hunter, from the bottom of the stack to the top of the stack in value creation. And that's what ultimately is driving hiring decisions today.
You know, Mark, we'd love to talk about career ascent, and you've had an amazing career. You could perhaps are going to be one of the legends here shortly. How would you say you crafted your career over the last 10, 20, 30 years? What are some of the beacons of hope or beacons of ideas that you can share with our audience here today? Because many of our people in the audience are really looking to get that next leg up, that next big idea.
Yeah, so Hunter, that's a great question. Early in my career, I did some hands-on systems engineering. I did some systems analysis and systems marketing. And I found that background, those few years, gave me tremendous perspective for the rest of my career and established my credibility in working with clients and solving problems. Solving problems being the objective of a placement. So what are your needs, Mr. Client? Here's the solution. But the part of my career that I really think back on and say, my goodness, did I really think that? Was after being in the contingency business, which is the fee for placement end of the search market. After about 13 years, my Rolodex was growing gray and so I said to myself, I really need to figure out how to get to the next level. And I purposefully decided that I would transition my career. I would go back to square zero and transition and relearn a career of executive search, which are essentially similar in that the objective is a placement, but they're really two very different activities at two very different levels. And so I put together a campaign to find an executive search firm, in this case, Korn Ferry, that would look at my previous experience in the contingent placement world as relevant and build off that foundation. I'm very, very happy I thought that way. It's 24 years now that I've been at Korn Ferry, and I'm hoping that Korn Ferry feels the same way. But that was the seminal moment, was discovering that, that my career is stuck and I need to do something about it.
And then I remember tracking you down because you were writing for a then famous publication. It was about this thick in paper, CIO magazine, and you were a contributing columnist, right?
Yeah, in the very late 90s, during the go-go days of the internet craze, CIO magazine approached me and asked me to write a career counselor column, which I did. When CIO magazine was that inch thick, the column was carried every week. And then as 2000, 2001 approached, the magazine got thinner and thinner. My column got cut back to a monthly. And then we flipped to CIO.com, which was another great pivot. Yeah, that was fun. I really enjoyed writing that column. And I still hear from people today who tell me, hey, you wrote this answer for me and gave me some good guidance and it worked really well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's the payoff for me in my role, is to help people. That's what this is all about.
You'd encourage people to speak at conferences, to write, to have an opinion, have a point of view, be a thought leader.
Yeah, so this is all about, HMG is all about having a platform with which to talk to your peers, to interface with your peers and trade advice and counsel, but also it's very important to me, and I hope to many of the other CIOs that you and I get engaged in the platform, it's very important to have that ability to share one's story. As you and Mark Taylor have spoken this morning about SIM being a similar great platform, to share your knowledge, to share your hard-earned experience and help those that come after.
Mark, great to see you. Really good job. How can people learn more about Korn Ferry Institute and the Disruptive Leader?
So kornferryinstitute.com is the way to go. Once you get there, search for Disruptive Leader. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can Google me. I'm the Mark Polanski that is not an astronaut. And I hope to see you online.
Great, Mark. Good to see you. Thanks again.
Take care, all. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Hey, next up, Mark Taylor. Mark, you're going to go do the Sim Leader of the Year award, right?
Yeah, Hunter, I have really been looking forward to this, and I know that you'll enjoy it as well. As I mentioned in the intro part of the this event, what has just blown me away about being a part of the SIM community is just the quality of the people, the leaders, what they've accomplished in life, and just the character of the individuals. And today, we're going to celebrate that with regard to the SIM world and the impact that these four individuals have had on the SIM world. I want to start out by introducing Angelo. Angelo Morello is the leader of the judging team that gathered this project together this year. And Angelo has done this for several years for SIM. I just wanted to thank him for that. Angelo, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I give you a moment to thank the rest of the team.
Mark, appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with this panel of judges, all past recipients of the Leader of the Year Award. And to also just give a shout out to Lydia Rudy from National as well, with all her help in coordinating the activities that we went through. Each of the recipients really demonstrates values, our SIM values in action. And, the judges did a great job assessing how each of these recipients demonstrated how the recipients paid forward in their community, helped to grow the SIM chapters locally, and advance the principles of SIM either in their enterprises or in other areas of their local communities. So personally, just want to shout out and say congratulations again to all the 2019 award winners, and for the opportunity to share this award.
Yeah, Angelo, thank you. I really appreciate it as well. And please stay on camera with us here. I want to invite Joel Schwabe, who's the chair of the board of Sim National. Joel, if you'll join us here on camera, if he's available. If not, we'll catch up with him later. But really appreciate him taking and investing in Sim leadership. We're going to honor today 4 of our leaders: Matt Nerney from Boston, Cindy Mckenzie from Southern Cal, Robert Jones from Charlotte chapter, and Elizabeth Decker from South Florida. And I will tell you that each of these leaders are unique in their own particular area. And if you guys could open the cameras on those on our guest, I'd like to at least give them a little bit of a moment to share this spotlight while we talk about some of the great things that have been said. Hey, Matt, how are you, sir?
Hi, Mark. I'm great. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing so great. Thank you so much for all that you invest in the Sim community. The Boston team obviously thinks the world of you. And I'm just going to have, you're going to have to sit here for a few moments while I read some of the marvelous things and the amazing things people talk about you as a leader and the impact you've had. So, Matt, hang here with us if you would be.
Not embarrassing at all, please.
Good deal. Well, listen, here's what I took away from it, Matt. You are the creative team builder. You are the creative team builder. And so here's what your team members have said regarding you. Proactive, engaging, thoughtful. Matt takes his volunteer role seriously in that he cares deeply about making each event truly great, but he also pulls it off with a wonderful and playful sense of humor. Matt has had significant impact on the quality of the Sim Summit through his innovation, creating huddle sessions. He proposed the idea, implemented it, and refined it over the subsequent summits. And with Matt's guidance and support, the CIO Roundtable has become a highly engaged set of Boston senior leaders where they regularly reach out to one another for technical guidance and support. And I think connection there is what I've seen, Matt. Matt's been on the CIO Roundtable since 2012. He's co-chaired since 17. He's been on the Summit Program Committee since 16 and a board member since 17 as well. He's well respected and always willing to go to the extra mile to contribute to the vibrancy of Sim Boston's community through his willingness to lead the CIO Roundtable, the huddles, the summit, and leading the role in establishing the Metro West Tribe. Matt is very understated about his role and contributions, calmly going about making positive things happen for Sim Boston. And Matt always takes the initiative to not only make our events better, but also the people he works with. Matt, thank you for your leadership and your investment in the Sim community.
Well, thank you. Those are very nice words. I think that was written by Amanda, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll find the propagator and thank them personally. But I honestly have been nothing but selfish in my role with Sim because everything I put into it, I get right back out from all the smart and generous people I get to work with. So thank you.
Yeah, Matt, tell me, what has the Sim community meant to you and just the time that you've put in it? What have you received back?
Just being amongst so many wonderful people, being able to share ideas, get feedback from the people that are on the same front lines as I am, and developing that camaraderie over time. I love the fact that we have so many repeat members year after year, continuing to join and be part of the group and stay engaged. And I love the fact that we also get to bring in fresh faces along the way. So I get a lot.
Mark, I have to shame Matt a little bit. Matt actually attended an RLF Reconnect, and I had the pleasure of being in that same Reconnect class. And it was the first time I got to meet Matt, and he's incredibly understated. So it's been a pleasure getting to know Matt, even for that brief time.
That's great. And Matt, I've had the opportunity to interact a little bit as well. I can't say enough. Matt, did you receive your award, Matt? Have you got that in the mail yet?
I do. It's a little heavy, but I have it right here.
Oh, good deal.
I put it on the kitchen counter and remind my kids about it every day.
That's great, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for all that you do for Boston, for Sim National, for the entire community. We're grateful to be a part of your world and that you play such an important part of ours. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Clap, everybody. There we go. Well, next we're going to go on to Miss Cindy Mckenzie. Hey, Cindy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I've had the great pleasure of working pretty close with Cindy over the last year through the Sim Foundation and outreach. And I can't say enough about Cindy, what I've observed and what your chapter members say about you. you're very highly thought of. So you're also going to have to sit here for a few moments while I read about some of these great things that people have said. So here's the phrase I've given Cindy. She is the inspirational Swiss Army knife, and you'll get what I mean as I read on. These are the things, Cindy, that your close friends and leaders in SIM community say about you. Cindy excels in every aspect of her professional life. As a CIO, she has tackled some of the toughest assignments in the country. As a SIM board member, she is both a strategic thinker and a get-it-done contributor. As a philanthropist, she advocates for the underrepresented and the underprivileged. Cindy represents what many SIM members aspire to be: someone who gives without expectation, achieves consistently, and acts with integrity. Cindy has built a stellar reputation among her peers as a hardworking leader who can thrive as a change agent under highly challenging circumstances. She is seen as a role model for IT leaders who aspire to the top job. In addition, Cindy has been steadfast in her passionate promotion of STEM Advantage, a local nonprofit that the chapter supports that opens up career opportunities for our next generation of IT leaders. She's a leader in philanthropy, both locally and nationally, as she leads the chapter philanthropy events while playing a national role to coordinate such efforts across the entire country. She remains our Swiss Army knife, willing to do hard work in multiple roles, from programs to secretary, selflessly delivering time and time again. Achievement, integrity, and community engagement, those are the essential ingredients of a true leader. And Cindy, thank you for all that you do, all the investment that you make in this SIM community, the family that extends across the entire country. It has been my pleasure to work side by side with you this last year. A real honor, honestly. And I can't thank you enough for all you do to invest in this community and make it what it is. Thank you, Cindy, and congratulations.
Thank you. That might be my eulogy.
Well, I am available for hire.
That was very, very nice.
That's great, Cindy. Well, Cindy, what has this community meant to you? I mean, you've invested quite a bit, and while I know you've made a lot of investments and given a lot, it must mean so much to you to have made that kind of investment.
Well, I think like a lot of people with SIM, it's become a family, right? I joined years ago. I joined initially to build out my network. And honestly, to me, that's going to always be the biggest benefit is, knowing my peers and having a group to share, troubles and tribulations and how to get through COVID and whatever it is. But on top of that, I have participated in probably the majority of the programs. RLF is amazing. I've put people through it and been amazed with what the benefits they get. I've loved the summits and the educational opportunities. And as you said, philanthropy is big for me. And it's been, my chapter's done a ton, and I've always been impressed with what they do. But I have to say, joining SIM Foundation and looking at nationally, what SIM does across all the chapters is awe-inspiring. And so, for me, it ticks so many boxes of things I want to be involved in and leverage. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. I'm honestly excited about what we're going to be doing through the foundation in 21 and beyond. Honestly, I think we've created some real momentum, and the SIM has done a lot. We give $1.5 million a year plus across the country, just in dollars. That doesn't even count the time. And I think what we're going to do over this next year and plus is really going to make an even bigger impact. Thank you, Cindy. I just can't say enough, and so grateful for all that you do to invest in the SIM community.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations, Cindy. All right. Well, the next we're going to Robert Jones, and I call Robert the great connector, and you'll understand why as I go on. Robert, you are the great connector, and I think as I read on about what your chapter leader friends have said about you, I think it'll become quite clear. So here's what Robert's friends say about him. He has been instrumental in so many areas of the chapter and a great supporter of outreach through his company sponsorships over the years. Robert has supported many opportunities for the chapter through membership, chair leadership, the members in transition engagement, the golf event sponsorship, and outstanding support for the chapter since he joined. His thought leadership, his service, his welcoming of many new members to the chapter, and his ongoing engagement with folks in the community needing guidance and assurance through transition is so much appreciated. Robert is a walking advertisement for SIM, always connecting us with new members or reconnecting us with old ones. Robert continues to bring guests to every event, always welcoming and introducing people. During his tenure as membership co-chair, the chapter more than doubled in their membership. Robert Jones's dedication and participation has been and still is a game changer for the organization. He was the rock upon which SIM Charlotte has been built. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude for his service, loyalty, generosity, counsel, and friendship. Robert, from all of them and from me and from all the other leaders across SIM, we're grateful for your investment in the SIM community, what you've done to help build such a great chapter in Charlotte. And just my hat's off to you. Thank you, sir, and congratulations. So Robert, tell us a little bit about what this has meant to you and what the chapter has, your investment in all this. How has it enhanced your life as you've made all this investment?
Mark, I got into this IT business back in 1978 here in Charlotte, 42 years ago, and had a couple of different jobs and ended up in the recruiting industry about 25 years ago, and learned to love to help people get new jobs. When the SIM Charlotte chapter was formed in 2010, I went to the leaders and asked them if I could be a member and that I would help recruit other leaders into the SIM Charlotte chapter. And luckily for me, they accepted me. And our company is also a member, Jones Grove. My partners are members, and I can't tell you how much it means, particularly at this time of the year, Mark, when you're going around giving out Christmas presents, which we can't really do right now because of COVID, but we're sending out presents to different people. And just the relationships and the friendships that have been born over the years, it's just wonderful. I'm very honored to be part of SIM here in Charlotte, and SIM nationally, and it's been good to meet you over the last couple of years. That's been very nice as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Robert, and the same for me. It's a real pleasure to have known you through all this. And I just got to say that the Charlotte chapter really has become one of our model chapters. You guys have done such a good job, and you clearly have been an anchor in all of that. So thank you again for your investment, Robert, and looking forward to seeing you down the road. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right. Take care, sir, and enjoy the rest of your trip today. All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to go on now to Elizabeth Decker, and Elizabeth is the little engine that gets it done. Elizabeth, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you, and I'm so pleased to be able to be the one who gets to deliver the award for you today. Elizabeth, you and I have had a chance to work together some over the last year, and I'm just so impressed with what you've done with the South Florida chapter and just you as a leader, and so grateful, honestly, that you're a part of the SIM community.
Well, thank you.
You bet. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what has been said about you. And I said you are the little engine that gets it done, and you really are. Elizabeth has kept the South Florida chapter of SIM moving forward and increased awareness throughout not only Florida, but also with chapters across the national path. Many of the other chapters she's worked with would never know how small their chapter is, based upon the quality of the work produced by the chapter through Elizabeth's leadership. During COVID-19, she reached out to other chapters in Florida to partner with them on virtual webinars to add more value to our membership by having a wide variety of events that couldn't have been possible with only the chapter itself. At one point, Elizabeth was handling the roles of program chair, secretary, treasurer, and president all at one time. She kept everything moving while recruiting very competent leaders for all the vacant roles and new roles that she created, resulting in improvement in marketing, quality of events, and communication. So Elizabeth has single-handedly lifted the organization. And she's also put a real focus on diversity. She's put together a 2-day workshop, 100% around diversity. She did this in partnership with colleges that focus on diversity, scheduling a job fair, and working with a local organization that focused on helping Black-owned technical entrepreneurs get funding and to start their business. Elizabeth is the engine that is driving SIM South Florida, and we're fortunate to have such a dedicated and exceptional leader at this phase of the chapter's development. Elizabeth, my hat's off to you. I'm so grateful the stage that the chapter's in. It's early in its growth, and they just couldn't have a better leader in place. And as the sitting in the CEO seat of SIM, I just can't tell you how much you mean to me and to all of us here that are helping plan and develop the community within South Florida. And you're just amazing, and I'm thrilled to be able to help invest alongside with you. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
You bet. So Elizabeth, tell me, what has this, I mean, you've gone through RLF and really got connected into SIM South Florida and planted there. And what has this brought back to you as you're going through all this time of investment?
So I think what it's brought to me is just how much opportunities I have been given through SIM. I joined SIM because I needed to build a network, much like Cindy did, and I had a great leader, Patrick Wright, and also Jason Davis they were very influential in giving me the basically free reign to do what I wanted to do. They're like, what position do you want on the board? And I said, well, I'd like to do partnerships and SIM women, so they let me do it and provided support and also, directed me to RLF. I also, when I got approved to go to RLF, it was actually my boss who was a previous SIM member that, knew the reputation of SIM and approved my going to RLF. And that provided even more opportunities, people that I met working with the, facilitators, June, Molly, and Michael all have provided, advice in that throughout, even after I left RLF. And again, it's just so many opportunities that I've been given and been able to take advantage of, because obviously, it's not just, having the opportunity there, but it's also getting involved and making the most of it. The board that I have, I think sometimes they don't give themselves enough credit for all the things that they've been doing to help, make the chapter what it is today. And it's really, really great to be working with such a great group of people, people that I have immense respect for and have really made the chapter what it is today. And, we're, as you said, we're small, but we're growing. And let's just say we're a force to be reckoned with. We're going to be bigger.
Yeah, I think so. I don't just think so. I know so, Elizabeth, honestly, and you hit on something really important there. It really is a team of leaders that come together to help build any community. And the fact that it says a lot, Elizabeth, about you as a leader, that you're able to maintain a group of strong leaders around you. And more leaders will be attracted to your team because of strong leaders. So it's all a tribute, honestly, to you as a leadership team and to you personally for all that you've done to invest. Congratulations again, Elizabeth, and thank you. All right. Well, listen, as we wrap it up, I just want to say a final thanks to Elizabeth, to Robert, to Cindy, and to Matt. You guys have made tremendous investments in the community, and clearly we're all grateful for your presence here within the SIM community. Congratulations again, and thank you to Angelo and the team who helped go through the process and identify these most worthy recipients of the awards this year. Thanks to everyone, and you guys have a great rest of your day. We're going to move on now to our next segment for our panel in the next section. Thanks again, everyone.
Mark, great job. You want to tee up the next panel?
Yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. We've got a really interesting group here, Hunter. I have been looking forward to this conversation. The four leaders that we have in this next panel have all been a part of industries who've been dramatically affected by the pandemic. Scott in the hotel business, Raphael in live entertainment, Susan in the university world, and Wayne in the healthcare. It's remarkable what these four people have been through, and I'm really looking forward to what they have to say.
Excellent. Take it away.
You bet. All right, so we've got with us today Susan Malisch from Loyola University, Scott Strickland from Wyndham Hotels, Rafael Sanchez from Feld Entertainment, and Wayne Bulmahn, Unite Here Health. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to invest in the conversation.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Well, listen, I think to get the conversation going, we're talking today about leading digital and security innovation in a highly distributed environment. And I'd like to start, Scott, with you and just dive into this question. What innovations did you and your team deliver during the crisis, and how did this impact the business?
Wow, Mark, we'll dive right in. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
So hospitality was at the front end of the crisis, as you can imagine. We'll hear a little bit later from some of my peers here, but as soon as the COVID lockdowns occurred in March, people stopped traveling. Yeah. So what we had to do immediately was pivot some of the projects that we had in flight to things that were really going to make a difference for our guest or for our franchisee. So as you can imagine, contactless became very, very big very quickly. People didn't want to contact a front desk agent when they were still checking in. So we delivered our mobile app basically 6 months ahead of when we originally had planned to, which is pretty incredible. And we brought mobile check-in and check-out capabilities to the economy segment for the first time. So our mobile app was set up and delivered for 6,000 hotels about 6 months ahead of time. So very excited about that. The other big innovation that we delivered for our franchisees, because we're a franchisee group with roughly 9,000 franchisees worldwide, was a way for them to get more folks into their hotels. The people who were still traveling were those first responders, those truckers, the firemen. Those were the people that were still on the road. So how could we appeal to that type of guest in this environment? And we delivered 2 or 3 different type of basically direct billing solutions that allowed them to stay at these places and then be billed back to their hospital, for example, or their fire unit without having to have a corporate card. We also, in turn, allowed a business loyalty program for the first time that rewarded paramedics for staying at one of our hotels. So it was pretty exciting as we looked and we pivoted during the crisis and said, what could we deliver in a different way for our 2 key customer groups, the guest and the franchisee?
Boy, that's remarkable, Scott, that you guys did it in such a short amount of time. I can only imagine the dip in revenue that the company experienced at the beginning of this. And as you have gone through this change and implemented these, how has that impacted the business and even on the revenue side?
At the beginning of the crisis, we were 90+% down on revenue.
Yeah.
So this was in March and April. And like many in the hospitality business, we had to pull on our revolver, basically a multi-billion-dollar revolver. And then in turn, we issued public debt. Now, since then, we've come out, and of the C-Corps hotels, we like to joke that we're doing the best because of that everyday business traveler. And people, as they travel, they're driving, they're not flying. So we're at that highway exit. So it's been really interesting just to see from the trough at -90%, now we're back into the -40, -30%, which feels good, but shouldn't. Being down 40 or 30% is still horrific and not something anybody could have planned for 18 months ago.
Scott, what are you anticipating? I mean, my sense as we come out of this is that there's going to be an onslaught. I mean, I know how travel starved I am. I'm looking forward to getting out, and I sense that many people are looking forward to getting out as well. What are you guys anticipating the second half of 21?
Absolutely. We think the dam will break. The proverbial dam will just burst open, Mark, especially during the summer season. As people get vaccinated and have a comfort level, we believe that hotel travel will just take off. And what we're trying to do right now is make those technology investments so that we can be at the front of realizing the benefits.
Yeah, fantastic, Scott. It's remarkable how you guys have responded under this stress. I'm dropping 90% in revenue overnight is just a shock to the system, but it's remarkable how you guys have recovered. We'll come back, Scott, in a bit with some more. Susan, a question for you. How has you and I have had the opportunity to talk several times recently about just how dramatic the impact has been on the university world and particularly on Loyola. How has the pandemic impacted innovation or changed your approach to innovation through this whole cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know we have talked a little bit about this. So just to put it in context, because I'm pretty sure most everyone on the phone has likely had a college experience some years ago yourself, or you have students and kids at home who are college age. So you can imagine it's a highly interactive and engaging student experience, and not just, you know, an online experience. So what we've been able to do with innovation, I think, is I think we've helped our community understand that we can embrace change a lot faster than we thought we could. We've accelerated some of the plans that we already had. And to underscore one of the points that Marcus made in one of the earlier panels, I think the value of pilots and proof of concepts in this kind of environment is really key. Getting something out quickly that people can react to, set the expectation, and the business is comfortable that it may not be perfection, but it gets us going, and then you can build from there. I mean, that has proved to be a real asset for us. Conditioning our constituent groups and our customers that we all have to be flexible. I mean, we've had to exercise flexibility in our personal lives as well as our work lives as we get up every day and the landscape has changed and we have to adapt. So setting that expectation up front has been tremendously helpful in terms of how people adopt change and we're able to innovate. I think this environment has accelerated our technology strategy that we already had in place in parallel. We have a technology strategy called Loyola Digital Experience, and I'll underline 3 times that digital experience part of that and how we've been able to move that forward. I'm so impressed with our ITS team at Loyola. I think all of us, by virtue of being in IT, problem solving gives people in IT energy. And a lot of what we've had, you know, had to tackle has given us meaning and purpose, and there's a sense of urgency around making a difference. So the way people have come together to rally around the challenge of the changes that we have to make, it's really been a team effort, and that's happening from the top, from our leadership team, you know, all the way to you know, to the direct technology team that I have. So so I think those are some of the ways that we've seen innovation change during this COVID time.
Susan, you know, you also walked a high wire. Your constituent base, and honestly, there were several different components of your constituent base that had very conflicting needs and frankly opinions about what you should do and how the university should act during this window of time. How did you lead your team through this, and how did you balance all of those competing interests?
Yeah, well, I think if I understand your question, Mark, I think, you know, there's a broad spectrum of how people are reacting to the pandemic. And, you know, we all know the adoption of the social distancing practices and things like that, and trying to encourage those behaviors in a younger population sometimes that believe that they're invincible. But I think you'd be surprised across many institutions, the willingness to participate and the belonging that you have in the community that you're in at the institution really helps reinforce those behaviors. But I will also say from a leadership standpoint, I think in times like this, you can't underestimate the importance of communication, and it's really hard to over communicate. So helping people understand what's going on and tell them why, you know, that Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, again, you know, really important in these times because it really helps build a shared understanding of the goals, the objectives, and how we need to all participate in this solutioning.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I think it's remarkable what you've done and your team, and honestly, the whole leadership team at Loyola, how they've navigated their way through the crisis. It's been remarkable. I know there's still more left to come, but remarkable what you guys have done so far. Thank you. Let's go to Raphael. Raphael is in the live entertainment business, probably very much like Scott experienced, an immediate drop off in revenues. You guys came into it. So what additional areas of focus have you addressed to ensure secure access? I mean, because suddenly you had teams scattered, I'm sure everyone working remotely all of a sudden. What have you addressed to ensure secure access in this new age of remote and distributed work, and particularly with regard to your industry?
Well, I mean, you know, first we face a lot of the same issues that Scott mentioned. You know, the whole contactless is top of mind for us as we, you know, basically tour in 75 countries around the world. From a remote security, I mean, we look at security as layers. So we continue to emphasize user awareness, but very specifically as to what are the new challenges that are in front of them, meaning that working from home, working remotely. We also have to address a very specialized set of users, which are creative users. I mean, as we do video and we do creative, the way to connect those people is a little different. So we got very, very creative and created a number of different VPNs. Obviously, I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I don't want to divulge our secret sauce. But so we had to pivot very, very quickly. Also, Susan mentioned a number of things that are very, very key, which is, we accelerated initiatives. The time to market from a viable product or minimum viable product, I mean, it just went from weeks to days, if not hours. The sensitivity and the flexibility of the organization and the agility of the entire organization to go live. Think about it. We ran 7 races back to back in Salt Lake City with no fans, starting in May. So we had to create a bubble. We basically created something that had never been, created before. I mean, from a sports perspective, we're like an NFL, we run Supercross, Monster Energy Supercross. So we go week to week to different venues, primarily stadiums around the country. With the pandemic, what we did is we created an approach that we ran 7 races over a period of 8 weeks. And we were probably one of the first live entertainment or sports that was live at the time. So, we had to pivot. I mean, back to the remote, it's a lot. The number one is awareness. Because when you're talking about remote security, it's all about the individuals that have those devices. We've implemented a number of additional tools in terms of remote management tools. We strengthened our bring your own device policy. So we kind of took the advantage of this time. And, we're very effective and timely in terms of going to market with these new solutions.
Rafael, it's amazing what you guys have done to adjust to the world, to the new world as it is today, and great to see that you're already getting back out into the field with new programs and generating new revenue. I'm sure the entire company is thrilled to see that happen. We'll come back to you with some more here in just a few minutes. I'd like to step over to Wayne now. Wayne, you guys have are in the area of healthcare with casino workers. Hospitality, service industry, et cetera. So you guys have had to go through quite a bit of innovation in this window of time. What additional improvements are you focusing on now to survive the crisis and allow your organization to scale rapidly once the pandemic is in check?
Thanks, Mark. Just a little additional background, as the other panelists have talked about, we've obviously been really impacted, but to give you a little background on Unite Here Health, we're in the hospitality industry, but we are particularly focused on being a health plan of choice for our participants, and in support of the union we support, as well as the larger employers. And it's hospitality really broken out in 3 areas. So it's around the gaming industry, as Mark had talked about. It's around hotel industry in general, and then also with the focus really on trying to help the food services industries. And the challenge for us, as much and probably even more so than maybe some of my fellow panelists, is our organization really had a crisis that when this hit, we went from high growth mode to suddenly we had 95% of our participants were unemployed. So it was really survival mode for us on how do we, innovate, change quickly, pivot, and deliver healthcare services, but also keep our organization and our funding afloat. So really the key innovations that we've kind of focused on, really, and maybe lessons learned and what we need to keep doing, really comes around a couple key things. So no surprise to folks, but we were really highlighted by the fact that we really need to focus on keeping things simple. I mean, nothing really hones the mind a little bit more when you're under straight duress and keeping things open, getting services moving, and you start to uncover all the not only complexity in your organization, but also the challenges around trying to put something in new and trying to over-engineer it. So for us, it's really keeping things simple, and that really dovetails into the next part around how do we improve the processes in our organization. So there's a really big push on continuing to review and measure, retool our processes, really focus on taking that then and automating. Some of the other innovations is we're looking is, how do we really increase the value of our hidden assets, with, the primary one being the data we collect. So a big focus on better leveraging our data across the enterprise, using that data to forecast quicker and better. And also finding ways that have come here that how do we enable getting that data out to our not, I shouldn't say our participants, but really our frontline workers, so that they can make decisions faster, or our frontline managers. So I think one of the other big innovations for us is we also operate health centers across the country. Is the importance, and it seems kind of funny now that you would think about it, of telehealth. It seems so obvious now that this is such a critical tool and what we need to do to leverage that going forward. But before the health crisis, there was a lot of resistance on many levels for how that was getting leveraged. So that's a big push for us in transforming our health centers, and how do we deliver services not only faster, but also more economically, so that we can spread those dollars and resources out more broadly.
Well, Wayne, I tell you what, a couple of things you said in there are really, I think, notable. One, it sounds like you're really working to eliminate friction in the end user engagement, just trying to, through your process, all the things that you mentioned, process, making it simple. The elimination of friction seems like a real focus for you guys.
It is, and I'd love to say we were already fully engaged in practicing it. We thought we were, but we really learned here again under that kind of need to of focusing on how do we move as fast as we can, and what are some of the things that we thought were sacred cows in our organization. And suddenly when we had to really peel back that onion layer and look underneath and see that, do we really need to keep doing it this way? Isn't there a simpler way? It just gained a lot of importance. So I think that whole KISS principle really just kind of resonated with all of us.
Hey, Mark, if I can add something that Wayne said. How many times do you get to pause your operations and redesign processes? We have 24 tours running, and for me to implement a new idea on 24 tours is a lot of effort. But when you're having them all paused, we can take a white piece of paper, redefine rules, redefine tools, redefine processes. And now we're running a couple of tours, but now we're running with hominin. So we have kind of the embedded pilot process without impacting the business.
Yeah, very, very much so. Thanks, Raphael. Hey, Wayne, there's something else I wanted to touch on before we walked off, left out. You mentioned about telehealth, and clearly it had been, I guess my observation, slowly adopted over time. Talk about something that advanced 5 or 10 years in this window that we've been through COVID. How's it going to change things for you and for the organization going forward?
Well, as an example, at our Las Vegas Health Center, we focused all of our efforts on how did we best manage our participants the moment they walked in the door. How did we guide them through the health center? And we have a rather extensive health center in Las Vegas. How did we make sure they were taken care of? How did we follow up with them appropriately? But there was really a focus on physically touching them and reaching out. Suddenly, we were experimenting and looking at telehealth, but like many organizations, not at an extensive level. Suddenly, it was a force to have happen. And fortunately, like I'm sure some of my peers in the panel can talk about, we had some key sorts of technologies already in place that enabled this. But it was really a focus on how do we fundamentally change the nature of the relationship with our participants or our patients. And fortunately, we had a great staff at the health center, really willing to do whatever it took to try to help the patients. And we aggressively moved on a kind of a quick down and dirty telehealth presence and evolved it over time. And now really we're completely changing how our health center works going forward, where before it was all about scheduling patients, trying to get them in over a period of time, and we had a backlog. Now with the use of telehealth, even during the outage, and we're just getting ready to reopen our health center, we've seen those backlogs drop off dramatically, and we're anticipating that instead of waiting weeks for an appointment coming in, that we'll be able to do a lot of triage and upfront work with the patients through the telehealth presence to the point where we can have folks come in and get an appointment either same day or the next day. So it's really kind of transformed how we're looking at operating our health centers.
Curious, one of our earlier guests talked about the physical footprint change, the different requirements. Is telehealth going to change the physical footprint requirement of your facilities?
I could see if, we're not an extensive hospital network, so we don't have an extensive number of facilities. What it may help us to do is we can manage growth better. So I don't see us condensing our facilities, but what I see us being able to do now is to have more flexibility in how we use space, or as we, knock on wood, start to come out of this in a couple of years. At least that's from our perspective. It'll probably take us a couple of years to get back to, year to 2 years to get back to our previous numbers. We're hoping that, we'll be able to grow much more effectively and not have to leverage continuing expansion of facilities.
Understood. It's going to have an impact, it sounds like, for sure. Thanks, Wayne. We got just a bit more time for one or two more questions. I'd like to go to Scott. Scott, how has the culture changed in this highly distributed environment? And are the changes going to be permanent?
It's changed fairly dramatically. I think, as Raphael was indicating, nothing like a good crisis to get you focused. And what we've done is three things. One, we've sped up. Our CEO calls a daily meeting now, 8 a.m. with all the directs, and we sit there and we talk about what's going on in the business. I then come out of that meeting and have a meeting with my directs. So we're really cascading and sharing that information a lot faster than we ever had before. Secondly, we have a higher tolerance for risk. Our MVP type product that we're distributing is an MVP that we might have waited and let bake a little longer than we ever had before, but we said, no, it's more important to get this into the marketplace and help our guests and franchisees. And then thirdly, we're more focused on our team than we've ever been. We've implemented employee appreciation days. So once a month, everybody has a Friday off across the organization. And that's the day where you can have your doctor's appointment, you can spend time with the family. You don't have to feel like you're waiting for the next Zoom call, because people are feeling chained to their computers across the entire enterprise. And it's made us realize just how very important family and work balance is.
Scott, I think I read something just yesterday on that subject of the impact culturally, and as we shift to more remote working, it's really going to have an enormous impact. And I tell you what, I really respect the leadership you guys took on that in giving your people time, dedicated time to go take care of all the other things that need to be taken care of, because it's quite easy when you're working from home to work all the time, isn't it?
And just leave them be, and then they pile up and you're doing them on Saturday and Sunday. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff.
Could I add one adjunct to what Scott had just brought up, and also kind of an innovation? It touched on something where he was talking about how we're trying to empower our staff more. I think one of the things when you couple that with speed is really also been the need to rethink, how do we empower our employees and give them the authority and accountability to move faster. So it's moving from, less and less of that command and control to more of how do we push that down and make sure we have the rapid communications to adjust quickly.
Boy, that really drives it home, Wayne. This distributed world, has not just distributing us physically, but from an operational standpoint, decision-making standpoint, and our ability to respond. That also has got to be distributed. Great stuff. Well, I'm going to wrap with one final question to Susan. Susan, what significant lessons have you learned? Are you taking away from this distributed environment?
Oh, great question. And I'll share two quickly. One is the first one is the exciting one. So it is, as others have said, a perfect time for us as business technology leaders. And I really believe a digital strategy plays a big role in our overall engagement strategy. So at the most basic level, and we've touched on it a little bit already, you want the online experience to be frictionless, easy. You want people to be able to do business with you as simply as possible. If you want to mature that a little bit, you want it to be relevant and personalized. So we want to know our employees, we want to know our students, we want to know our prospects, you want to know your customers. And then if you want to do an extraordinary job, then you want to have that experience create a sense of belonging to a community, create affinity for your product, your service, whatever it is, loyalty. And at the end of the day, if you're wildly successful, they'll become promoters. And that's what, I mean, for all of us, I think that's what we really want. So that's the exciting piece of, I think, you know, a takeaway of our shared experience here. The reality is, you know, the more real one is the bad guys don't rest. So we're doing all this in an environment where there's just so many more information security concerns, and being attentive to your information security layers that you can control, but then also how do you create awareness and suspicion and all those good characteristics that you want your employees and your customers to have, so that, you know, when they're working at home, working on some other Wi-Fi network or not your network, that you are sufficiently protecting your assets.
Great insights, Susan, and honestly, great insights from the entire team. So thank you, Susan. Thank you, Scott, Raphael, and Wayne. Appreciate your time this afternoon, and looking forward to the rest of the day and seeing you all a little further down the road. Hunter, back to you.
Excellent. Great job, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Hey, next up, we have driving cultural change into 2021 and beyond. Really, it really always comes down to people, doesn't it? It's really amazing. It always comes down to people. How do you lead? How do you empower? What's the new paradigm of leadership and empowerment? And we have a really distinguished panel here. Really excited. First up is Melissa Hohauser from the TCF Bank. She's the Senior Vice President of IT, Servicing and Ops. Hey, Melissa, when you think about culture and critical success factors, building a high-performing culture in this work from anywhere, work from home environment, what are the lessons learned and key factors that you've come across?
Well, thank you, Hunter, and thank you for having me here today. What a interesting day. I feel like I'm going to repeat some of the things that I've already heard, because there is a common theme here. In order to have that empowerment culture, you have to have trust, and with trust, you've got to empower your teams. And for me, there's three things that have really, I would say there are three things that have really driven my cultural journey, and that's passion, vulnerability, and courage. Without the people doing the things, we're not going to move forward. And these times of change and uncertainty are of the utmost time to show your vulnerability, show your cards, and be there for your team. And in turn, you'll reap the benefits, I'll say.
So what does that look like, being there with them? What is it essentially? Let's click down on it one more time.
Sure. So to click a little bit, to double click into that, if you will, being there for my team is listening. Listening to understand what skills I've developed over the years and how I can help them to either learn them, to bring them along in my journey. It is going to be very unique to the individual. I am lucky enough to have a team where I can be very connected with each of them one-on-one. So listening and responding, and then following through. Because you can listen and you can act, but if you don't follow through on what you've committed to, you're not going to build that trust and ultimately that empowerment culture.
That's really key, is that follow-up, right? And then any kind of secrets to building that trust? Because that really is the key, right?
Building the trust. You've got to feel it. It's got to be genuine. It's come natural to me as I've put an emphasis on it. So that is probably a lot of my mindfulness, being present in the moment. We have a tendency, especially in this digital world, and especially with what 2020 has put forward for us, to multitask. I heard others talking about this as well. And leaning in and really focusing shows that trust.
Excellent. Love it. Great job. I agree. Trust is the key element. Stephen Covey Jr. has The Speed to Trust is a great book. I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey Jr. Next up, we have Julia Anderson. Julia is the global CIO of Smithfield Foods, a big SIM fan and friend. And actually, I believe, Julia, an RLF graduate, right?
20 years ago.
Amazing, right?
And send 2 to 3 people every year.
2 to 3 a year. That's you must love the program.
Love the program.
Very cool. Hey, when you think of digital acceleration, you've been in an interesting position at Smithfield, North American based, food processing, right? One of the largest in the country. Difficult thing in a pandemic. And now we're talking about digital acceleration. Walk us through that. Talk us through that. What does that story look like?
Sure. So, well, 2020 has been real for everybody, right? There's a whole lot of new realities that have hit everyone. We've had to really flex and change, and sort of no different in a food company. Being out front, we had to really quickly worry about our food, the safety of our workers. How we were going, like everyone else, to shift. And we've all, talked a lot about the basics, right? We have to run our business. We have to make sure our CEOs, are running the business that we're able to deliver. But I think one of the key important topics is a lot of things got real also with our world and with, understanding how people are feeling, how they're being treated. There was a lot of things going on at the same time around, for us, around really being able to take what's being said about us and our company and how we're, treating our employees, and really make sure that we understand that conversation and we understand what we're doing and what's important. So when you think of the cultural aspect, when I think of the cultural aspect, of what we went through at Smithfield, early on we had to sort of get our act together, figure out how to test people, how to send people home, how to keep the lines running, how to get the food delivered. That was one piece. But the next piece was then, how do we engage in our communities, and what's the cultural changes that we're going to make as a company to be able to thrive and to be able to survive. And so really a lot of conversations that maybe we wouldn't have been having started happening. One example is after the George Floyd incident with our Black Professionals Network, we sat down and said, what should we be doing as a company? We do a lot of philanthropic things, but one of the things was really around ensuring that we thought about where we were connecting people and where we were actually donating not only food, but connectivity. And so this brought me, sort of to this concept of equality and everybody having access. And when kids are working from home, people are working from home. And we really see the difference between us and some of the frontline workers in our factories in very remote locations and the farms. For me, some of the cultural conversations we're having that, wow, maybe as we grow our digital engagement, we don't have equality, and we have to really focus on that as technologists. How do we all come together and focus on equity? Not just what's the message, but is everybody getting it? Does everybody have access? I think there's a lot of things, being a food company, we had to get things figured out early on, but a lot of conversations now around technology and how do we automate our the things that we're our engagement with not only our employees, but the engagement also with our communities and our employees' communities. And so we've been having a lot of conversations around that. So I think that's a really interesting outcome. And I think we have a long way to go as technologists. You can talk about bias in AI, and you can talk about, a lot of things that we need to come together, but even just getting people engaged and connected.
Well, Julia, you've had an amazing career, some 20, 30 years into it, right? And now you're at a senior executive level, and scale matters and layers matter, right? How do you manage a large organization?
Right. So, we had heard someone talking in the last session about changing how we communicate in the conversations that we're having, and being the cross-functional silos really coming down quickly, having really pointed conversations with very clear direction, and being able to cascade that throughout the organization. Decisions being made much quicker. So I think, through this pandemic, a lot of these things that we struggled with in the past to really even just come up with, better ways to communicate, we've kind of sliced through a lot of that. And being able to, I think we talked about it before, be courageous, be bold, speak up, take advantage of that opportunity, and say some things that you might not have said in the past, to break through, things that we need to break through very quickly to solve the big problems facing us, whether that's planning differently, whether that's, getting new procedures out, getting buildings built, whatever that may be.
Excellent. Julia, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the program. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Next up, John Repko. John's the EVP and CIO of AIG. John, we've been collaborating with each other probably 20 years now. John?
At least.
Right?
At least. Great to be here, Hunter.
Good to see you, my friend. Hey, you've had an amazing career. How many different CIO roles? 5, 6?
Yeah, 5 public company and 1 business unit.
Okay, and then now at AIG, the scale that you're operating on, just kind of a context, global scale?
Yeah, 80 countries, 5,000 IT employees, $2 billion in spend.
Wow. And your role now includes the CIO of AIG plus your head of procurement.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix. Keeps it lively for sure.
Amazing. When you think of the role of the CIO, you've been tracking it for a couple decades. What's the biggest challenge that you're seeing right now, and the biggest issue that CIOs need to tackle?
I'd say cyber and talent, Hunter, and I think they're equally challenging right now. Think about what happened this week. With the U.S. government, the implications. There's just never a dull moment in cyber. And then, talent, I continue to see that we're operating in a zero unemployment situation. And, one of the better things that came out of COVID-19 would be bringing down those walls of where you can get talent from. That's been really interesting to watch. We certainly have opened up our walls and are much more open to, hybrid, remote, and even fully remote situations.
So what does that look like?
Well, when you find a cloud engineer and they want to be in Denver and you don't have a site in Denver and you ask them to go to, Phoenix, they don't have to do that these days. There's 20 companies that let them work from home. So we found just a little bit more flexibility, let people work where they want to be. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best talent.
Interesting. John, when you think of the importance of culture and talent, what comes to mind?
Well, I look at the impact that videos had on how we work. If you looked at my calendar a year ago, you wouldn't see a single video conference call the whole month. If you look at my calendar today, you don't see a single audio call. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of good outcomes associated with that. It's a little challenging at times as well, but and I think another thing that our IT folks are going through across the globe are just adopting to a culture of cloud, working closer with the users, much more agile work versus waterfall, all the governance and security that comes around cloud. I mean, that's a big cultural change for a lot of IT folks.
Gotcha. Makes sense. John, when you think of your career ascent, you've had a great career. What are the top kind of 1 or 2 ideas you'd like to impart to a broader audience of IT leaders that maybe one day want to be a CIO?
Yeah, build your boardroom skills. It's a lot different when you're in front of the board of directors and when we're with management. Try and do that early. If you're a direct report to the CIO, find a way to present and get some experience. And then once you're in a CIO seat, build your relationships with your board. It's always important to have someone on your board who's your board buddy, somebody you can talk to. Hopefully they have a technology background. But I think that, you know, don't wait till it's too late to get some board experience, pitching to the board, thinking like a board, because when you get selected to be a CIO, it's going to be too late.
Excellent. Great insight, Sean. Thanks for coming on. Stay with me. Next up, we have Quintin McGrath. Quintin's a Senior Managing Director of Technology Management and Enablement at Deloitte. Hey, Quintin, good to see you.
Yeah, and yes, good to be here. Thank you.
Always. Hey, you know, what an interesting title. Talk to us a little bit about technology and management and enablement.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting role I have. Essentially, it's across a number of areas that help transform the organization. So running all the way from innovation and helping the organization think about innovation, not doing the innovation, but catalyzing innovation in the organization, architecture, change, project management, service focus. So all those areas within our global IT organization really try and focus on how do we accelerate that transformation.
And you also have an expertise around innovation and cultural layers, some 5 cultural layers inside of Deloitte.
Yeah, so that's an important personal focus of mine, is really how do we consider our teams and recognize that there are 5 different generations within the organization right now, and each of those have a different way of operating, and different likes and dislikes, and different expectations of their roles, and the reason for being in jobs. And then not only that, we have in Deloitte, like many of my fellow panelists, a global organization with many countries represented as well. And so the balance between just the multi-generations, the various countries, and of course, all the other diversity that we have in the organization that we find is so critical.
You know, when you think about how COVID's impacted the organization and the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, what do you think about?
You know, one of the key things is there's a body of knowledge that's growing around the importance of diversity, and especially diverse thinking in terms of innovation and success, business success. And so one of the key things is how do you maintain and make sure you continue to grow diversity, equity, inclusion in an organization? And that certainly is a huge drive in our organization. Very, very, very strong focus from our leadership. Now, something that COVID has done is it's impacted the different parts of our organization, different parts of not just our organization, but literally the community differently. And we start seeing a greater impact on, for instance, women, a greater impact on African Americans, a greater impact on Hispanics. And the focus on then trying to reestablish that equity then becomes a complex challenge for leadership and for business leaders. And so being aware, number one, that there is this imbalance in impact that COVID's had, and whether that's just literally the caregiver that's more predominantly perhaps a woman, or there's the different parts of our economy that have been affected differently. So whether it's the service industry or maybe the low levels in the organization, those are often impacted by people who are trying to develop their careers. And all those aspects we have to then consider as we go into recovery, as we go into figure out how do we thrive in this new environment, that we've got to think and got to recognize that there is this imbalance that COVID has caused that we have to right as leaders as we look forward to the COVID, the stabilization, as we get into vaccines and go from here.
So you folks are really, really smart at Deloitte. We all know that. And my good friend, Larry Quinlan, you work with on a global level. Yeah. I mean, when you think about cultural change and cultural shift in this work from anywhere environment, with all of these different enablement and collaboration platforms and tools, what's working from a technical perspective and what's working from a communication perspective?
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of things that are working from a technical perspective, and we were in some ways a little bit lucky in terms of the fact that the way we always operate as an organization was remote. And so there's a lot of our basic foundation was we distributed through the world. We used to being in client sites. We used to being able to communicate and be able to operate remotely. And so in some ways, those basic infrastructures and basic technologies were fairly well established in Deloitte and other professional services organizations. And so we've been able to say, right, let's use that foundation and really step up. And so we've seen the ability to use a lot more and a lot richer environments in terms of how do we communicate, how do we take advantage of those, of the environments, the platforms that we have in place to communicate. And, you know, it goes back to this whole understanding of where people are at. Going back to my interest in the different generations, the way we communicate with different generations and different parts of the world are different. And so being able to have video and extensive use of video, being able to literally have the privilege of being invited into people's homes in many parts of the world through video, through this type of video conference is a very rich experience. And as a leader, I've been able to take advantage of that. And we've seen it happening in our organizational life where leaders have seen the benefit of getting closer and understanding and helping our people and thinking about people holistically and much more as whole people, which I found has been such a rich environment. So that goes all the way back to we've got the platforms that we can use and then build on that the communication. And as a leader, thinking about how do you communicate, how do you encourage, how do you inspire your people in times like this.
Love it. Great job, Quintin. Thanks for being on the program. Sure. Hey, Mark, do we have some questions in the chat there that you want to jump in on?
We haven't had any that I want to jump in, but I have to say the comments that I'm hearing, Hunter, from all of these, it speaks to the complexity and frankly, the importance and the criticality really that these leaders now have. We're as Dr. Bray commented earlier today, not only are we leading in every aspect of the strategy of the business, but also at the forefront of defending the business and the geopolitical fight. It's a remarkable space we're in. And what it reminds me, Hunter, is how critical our network is, the relationships that we have to be able to connect and learn from one another during this time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, right? Agreed with you on that one, Mark. Let's talk a little bit about the networks. Melissa, the importance and the power of your network, the networks that you're involved with.
Absolutely. I think now more than ever, it's critical to have forums like this to talk through what it is that we're experiencing, what we're learning, what we're challenged with. And it's very energizing. Every one of the HMG strategies since sessions that I participate in, I get very energized by the community that we have here. And I myself have leveraged multiple women's networks during this pandemic to, I'll say, do a check-in, make sure that I'm on par with what my peers are doing and how they're doing, see if I can help or if they can help me. And without these networks, I just certainly, I don't know what it would be like without the video and being able to see everyone and, really having that relationship. I said it in the beginning with the trust and partnerships.
Thanks there, Melissa. Hey, Julia, do you want to comment on the power of the network and how you network, really? Any tips on networking?
Sure, absolutely, yes. So I think the power of the network, especially, across SIM and HMG and these forums, is the ability that I could hit up Quintin tomorrow or John tomorrow and just say, hey, I have a question, I need help, I need your input, I need someone from your team to connect with someone from my team. Just the power of being able to phone a friend. I mean, it's just right there. And, the wealth of knowledge, experience, whatever experience it may be, also being able to have very candid, frank conversations, right? There's a lot of stories that we're hearing now, right? There's a lot of people and humanity stories, and we're all saying, we're at a point that we actually have a power to choose where we want to contribute or we want to help make change. All of our children, they want to make change. They're born believing we have to make change, whether it's for the planet, for the society, for the people, and technology is right there. So for me, the power is really when I can come together, also in some women's networks, mentoring, and have a goal to make a difference. I think that's the power.
Awesome. Love it, Julia. Again, great to see you. Hey, John, do you want to comment on networking as it relates to kind of your professional performance over the years and the value and the importance?
It's incredibly important, Hunter. And in my view, it really never stops. We've all met folks who maybe network when they're looking for a job. It's really a 7x24 by 365 activity. And I think one of the most important things is to be known as a good networker. I try to give back 10 times what I take. And when you do that, you develop, a brand of a giving and a caring networker. And I think that's one of the most important things. So for the folks out there, focus on what you can give back. And I can guarantee you, when you need somebody's going to be there for you.
Awesome. Great comments. Thanks, John. Nelson Burns just picked that up. He says, give back 10 times what you take. That's great. Great comment. Hey, Quintin, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, just the whole aspect around networking is just so critical. Not only network within the business around the global organization, but just taking a look at critical networks like this one, like SIM, like the HMG, like Seller, that a number of areas where just being able to connect with peers. And I loved what Julia said, kind of the ability to pick up the phone and call people who you've been part of and you've connected with. That's what really makes a difference. If I go back to the younger days in my career, it was networking with the senior people. And John made the comment about the board connection early in your career. For some reason, I managed to get that right at the beginning, and I befriended the chairman of the board, and it was just an amazing friendship that really helped me think differently as a leader. And those, to me, those are the rich times that I'll never forget, and just so critical as far as networking and really helping others. I love that concept of give back 10 times what you receive, pay it forward like crazy. I think is so important.
Very cool. Great time to be a tech leader now.
For me, being a tech leader right now is the most exciting things. We touched on it earlier. There's just so much happening. There's so many capabilities and technologies today that just were never there. I was just thinking about the other day how we've had cycles of the years of AI being good and having to go into freeze period because there wasn't technology. And now the technology is there and we can do greater and more important things with technology. But then also figuring out how do we, not just can we do it, but should we do it? And how do we do things in a positive way for the good of all, for the benefit of all? And that to me is just a rich place for us as leaders. And that's our responsibility. We've got so much responsibility on our shoulders. Every company is a tech company. We as leaders, tech leaders, need to be carrying that forward and being an example and helping our organizations take that and really use technology for the good of all.
Excellent. Thanks, Quintin. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on the program. Hey, Melissa, final comment?
I just want to leave you with a quote that I just found very, very fitting for me and my approach to my culture journey. The stronger the culture, the less corporate process a company needs. And when the culture is strong, you can trust everyone to do the right thing. People can be independent and autonomous, and they'll be entrepreneurial.
Love it. Love it. And exciting time to be in our industry?
Very exciting. Yeah, absolutely exciting in technology, and for me personally in the financial space, leaping into a third merger in less than 5 years. So long for the roller coaster.
Great to see you, Melissa. Julia, any final comments?
I really want to put an exclamation point on what Quintin said around we have to take our technology responsibility very seriously. I think that technology is driving every company, and we have to make the right decisions how we deploy it and make it accessible to everybody and really use it to make the world better.
Love it. Thanks for coming on the program. Hey, Mark Griesbaum has an interesting quote there in the chat. Do you see it?
Yeah, I do. And Mark Griesbaum is just a high quality guy, isn't he, Hunter?
Yep.
He says a leader who gives back to their community grows in their career and can make a difference, a significant impact that you may not even know that you're making. As leaders, everyone is watching you. Everyone is watching us, and every decision, every action, every communication that we make. And we never know everyone that we're going to impact. So continue to lead, continue to connect, and continue to do it the right way. Boy, I love what Melissa just said, by the way, around the culture, and going back to speed of trust, Hunter. That concept, that culture, a culture of trust, actually lowers the cost of doing business and increases the speed. It's remarkable. Thanks, Melissa, for saying that.
Well said. Exactly. I could agree 100%. John, final word.
Yeah, Hunter, in these unprecedented times, I think that the most impressive executives are going to be the ones who take care of their talent. And that could be anything from growing their talent, retaining it, but more important during these troubling times, just reaching out. I try and make 40 to 50 quick reach outs, whether they're texts, emails, or calls across the globe every week. And it's amazing what you get when you call somebody for absolutely no reason to check in. So I would just say, take care of your talent.
Love it. Hey, John, great to see you. Thanks for coming on the program, the summit. Melissa, great job. Quintin, Julia, thank you so much. Mark, we got one more session.
Yeah, I know. It's been an amazing day already. I can't believe we're this far into it already, Hunter. Been a great day.
Getting a lot of great feedback from the chat rooms. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Hey, next up in our closing executive interview, Steve Phillpott, CIO of Illumina and president of the San Diego SIM chapter. I've had the privilege of working with Steve in the San Diego chapter now going on a decade, I think. Steve, you there?
Hey, Hunter, how you doing? Yeah, it's hard to believe. One, we're almost at the end of this crazy year, and you're right. It's hard to look back and think that we've been working together for a decade plus. Been great.
A decade plus, and I think I'm right in saying that you were a co-founder of the San Diego SIM chapter, correct?
I was one of the co-founders of the SIM San Diego chapter, and that was I think we might have been one of the first SIM chapters to start partnering with HMG to kind of build out our network. That last session was great. Really getting into that discussion about how powerful the network is. We can't do everything ourselves, and it's great to have that network out there where we can reach out and have that type of discussion.
Yeah, let's talk about that more a little bit later, but let's go back to what was it about the SIM's mission that you were so passionate with? I think it was Yasmin and the others, Barb and you created. Yeah, the San Diego chapter. What was it about the mission of SIM that you wanted to bring to San Diego?
It was a couple things. One, it was about the networking, and a couple people have talked about it, but that was one of the things I also learned early in my career was how powerful the network is to help us kind of move forward. Two is, one of the things that I liked about the mission of our chapter in SIM was about giving back to the community, helping to mentor that next generation of technology executive. And since our founding of the SIM San Diego chapter, we've given money to new college grads that are specializing in the technology field to kind of help them on their career. And again, whether it's the creation of our Women in Technology group, whether it's the mentorship programs, whether it's the scholarship we give, there's something about that satisfaction of being able to kind of help that next generation that I just love.
Very cool stuff, and couldn't agree with you 100%. And you have some news in the middle of this craziness that's going on this year in the pandemic. You made a move over to Illumina.
Okay, is that the craziest thing you've heard of, Hunter? We've got all the craziness going on in 2020, and what do? I decide to add another level of craziness on it and change jobs. So yes, I'm currently the SVP CIO for Illumina, kind of working on next generation genomic sequencing. And it was funny. I had a couple of people joke with me about kind of moving over there, especially after Illumina announced kind of a partnership where they're working on storage to where, we might be able to actually store data on DNA. Coming from Western Digital, which specialized in storage, they said, "Oh, you just went there just because of that." And I said, "No, I went there because of the mission. The mission and what they're doing, the impact on people's lives was just really, really exciting."
So a little more context for those of us that might not know the mission of Illumina. What is it all about?
It's all about kind of unleashing the power of our DNA, and you take a look. I mean, just look at the current crisis that's going on right now with COVID and the race to find cures. Well, our technology allows companies to process and sequence that DNA. All of that is part of the development of these next generation drugs. All of that is what's allowing us to accelerate these discoveries. So being part of that particular pipeline and the impact that it has on people is just really, really exciting.
Very cool. There's been a theme today, Steve, about storytelling and executive presence and executive style. And again, I've had the pleasure to work with you and your team in San Diego for a decade. And you really have a great way about you in terms of your style and your leadership. Can we just, sometimes it's hard to talk about ourselves, but how would you describe your style and your leadership and where you get your passion and courage? And I do believe you have a bit of a military background in there too, right?
Yeah, I do. I come from a military background, as you were saying, and that gives, it's interesting. You spend time in the military, and they teach you a lot about leadership and management. But if I kind of take it up a little bit. There's a couple maybe core foundational things to think about, and a lot of it ties back to what many of us have read over the years. Now, you might have read it in some of Stephen Covey's books. You might have read it as part of the Table Group, but it's kind of that concept around organizational health and the foundation being around building trust. Now, in the Table Group, they call it kind of the smart organization and the healthy organization. The smart organization being kind of what you get done, and the healthy organization being how you get it done. And that's really where the trust aspect. And I had the luxury of, within Western Digital, we focused on organizational health as part of the Table Group kind of philosophy. But the company I was with before that, we had something very similar. It was just called Ways of Doing and Ways of Being. But it really focused the organization around the concept of trust. And what's happening right now is our move to go from kind of on-premise in-person meetings to remote. That puts a lot of pressure on kind of trust and the ability to have trust with the peers, with those that you're working with. And so from a personal kind of leadership style, you've got to build in those things that allow us to build up that trust. And it's a combination of trust and engagement. But we've had we've had our friend Tony and others talk about kind of leadership skills, having empathy, being transparent, listening and asking. One of the things that the difference kind of going from on-premise to remote from a leadership standpoint is you can't assume that silence is people agreeing. So you've got to have that ability to be active listening and active managing. And it's really, the next part is around making sure you have that engagement. How do you keep employees, how do you keep the team engaged when you're not in the same building, when you can't walk by their office and knock on their door and say, hey, how did things go? Or, talk about your favorite sports team there.
Yeah, MBWA kind of goes out the window, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Totally.
Unless you're, yeah, no,
And
definitely.
and so communication style and engagement style and getting individuals to be better communicators, right? In general, our tech professionals don't tend to be great communicators, and they're not really on the extrovert extreme.
Right. And again, from an engagement standpoint, so if we take a look, IT, we've actually been in a remote, at least, I was at, Western Digital. I had a lot of my team working remote. And when I look at asking the question, what jobs work effectively remotely? Now, this is pre-pandemic. I was looking for three factors. One is it the right type of work? Not all work can be done remotely. But the second two are around, it takes the right manager to manage a remote employee. And then third, it takes the right employee to work remotely. And what those mean is the right manager and the right employee. One of the key jobs is, how do we teach them how to be engaged? Because if people go remote and you lose engagement, then we start losing some of that trust. And I think that's one of the skills. And this is, I think, partly where you were going, Hunter. This is one of the skills that kind of we as leaders in IT need to make sure we teach to our direct reports and cascade down, is how our managers can manage remote employees to ensure that they have that level of engagement. And I think we were kind of forced into that position here, 8 or 9 months ago, and it's been a work in progress. But I think it's actually working well in many areas.
Well, you've been living this and thinking about this for a long time. At Western Digital, it was a global enterprise, a global footprint, right? How many countries?
Yeah, well, we were all over the world. I lost track of how many countries, but literally, over 70% of my team was global, outside the US. I had 2 of my direct reports that worked out of their house, away from the headquarters office. I had my head of architecture work out of his house. I had my head of networking work out of his house. But again, if the managers know how to manage a remote employee and keep engagement, and if the employee knows how to work remotely and keep engaged, then the process can actually be fairly productive.
Hey, Steve, I think more and more the role of the tech leader is going to be one of facilitating, enabling, and leading innovation. At our Summit of America back in March of 24th this year, some 9 months ago, just 12 days into the lockdown, you went from physical to digital. And you made a profound statement saying this will be a time of innovation. How did you know that?
Well, a couple things. One is, by default, we've always kind of got to be looking at innovation. But if you take a look at a couple things, and we've talked about some of these over the last 8 or 9 months. But one, for some companies, the pandemic was this perfect swelling of the high tide that just accelerated their innovation. So think of companies like Zoom and Peloton. They innovated in a space, but what did the pandemic do? It just put them in hyperdrive, going forward. So definitely being in the right place at the right time. But in a time of crisis, I mean, think you've got distractions, you've got all these unexpected things coming. I mean, the pandemic, we talked about this before, was like the ultimate business continuity plan, where normally you test one little part and now it's testing everything. Well, in a time of crisis, many companies do probably one of two things. Is one, they either grind to a halt and everything is focused on cost. They're kind of losing some of their creative focus. But the second opportunity is, while it's important to focus on cost, this is the time where there's probably an opportunity to double down on some investments kind of going forward. And I'm going to plagiarize some analogies. I don't take credit for these, but throughout the course of this year, we've heard a couple analogies around kind of Formula One racing, where the discussion was around a Formula One race car on a sunny, dry day. It's really hard to pass somebody else. But what happens when it's raining? What happens when the circumstances change and get unexpected? That's the things that create opportunity. And that's part of what the pandemic did for some folks. It kind of created a little bit of a pit stop to allow them to figure out, hey, where might we be able to double down and kind of invest in the future going forward?
Love it, Steve. Great job.
Hey, Hunter, we shouldn't. I know we're kind of coming up on the time here, but nobody asks you questions during these interviews. I think we should turn the tables around a little bit. What do you think?
Love it. Yeah, go for it.
So we're speaking about change, and one of the big changes that I know you've been working on, with Mark from SIM, is the whole partnership between HMG and SIM National that you've been working on. And we've already talked about it. Several of us, SIM groups have been working with HMG for a while. Maybe you can kind of comment on some of your thoughts on kind of the synergies between the two organizations, and maybe we can get Mark to pop back on, and he has a comment or two.
Yeah, there, Mark's on. We're on right there.
All right.
Great point. I really think for many reasons, the reason why between HMG and why the relationship works with SIM chapters is we complement SIM chapters in terms of our investments and where we place our bets and how we've architected our model over. Really, it's an idea I had 30 years ago. So creating a CIO group, and I actually gave the idea to Gideon Gartner, the founder of Gartner, back in 1988 and 89, and he didn't want the idea. He was down a level, wanted to write a report once and sell it 1,000 times. So I gave it to his competitor 2 years later, and about 8 years later, he finally launched his CIO group. That was 1998. But by the way, fast forward, unfortunately, as an update over the weekend, he passed away. But he had a great run and a big impact on our industry, a real big positive impact on our industry. But what I love doing, I think maybe like you, Steve, I love up-leveling people's game. I love being a coach. I love facilitating growth and leadership and learning. And I wanted to do it not as a practitioner one-on-one, but I wanted to do it on scale. So when we had enough contacts and money to launch the network in 08, 09, 2010, we just cobbled a patch quilt around the country. And largely in the first few years, it was SIM chapters that we'd break into. We win the Silicon Valley just on our own. I said, we got to be number one in Silicon Valley. Tony Lang said, we don't need you out here, Hunter, go away. I can proudly say it's the number one platform in Silicon Valley. Pretty tough market, but I think there's an amazing synergy and a complementary energy and kind of values, principles, beliefs, and values that SIM possesses and that we have at HMG. So that would be my take on it, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Hunter. And thank you, Steve, for all that you've done for SIM and planting the flag there in San Diego with Barb and the rest of the team. I will say that there's some great overlap. The persistent presence of our SIM chapters in every market really provides a place for every local group of leaders to connect and stay connected locally. Steve, I know you guys have a great group of leaders that you've established in the San Diego market, and you guys are really interactive from what I've seen. And I think that's consistent across the country in our chapters. And I think where Hunter's team brings in the complement, and just like we've experienced today, what a great group of leaders. I mean, and from all over the country, across all the dimensions of industry, and the sincerity, and the character of these leaders. So there's just such a great complement, quite frankly, with what Hunter has developed and how it helps feed and strengthen each of the local chapters. And here at the national level, Hunter and I have been working together and continuing to find ways to amplify that and to bring greater value to each member of these networks. So more to come, frankly, Steve, as we look further down the road. But it's been a really good and productive year. I mean, even in the midst of this craziness, honestly, there's been a year of growth in the midst of this as well. Hunter, you and your team flipped so quick to the digital platform, you spun our heads quite candidly. And I think you got a market advantage as a result of it. And it's been a great compliment. You know, each week when you guys go into the neighborhoods where our chapters live and breathe every day, you're shining a bright light on this community. And you've shared that with us, with me personally, as the kind of unfortunately the face of Sim National. But you know, it's a generosity of giving. I think Steve is what I see from Hunter, and he's always just such a friend to the Sim community.
Well, I think
there's more to come.
Yeah, I think the two of you have left us with that great parting question. How can we leverage the HMG Sim synergy to up-level our game? I think we're starting 2021 on a good footing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Agreed. And thank you for taking the time today, man. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Steve, great to see you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you guys.
Take care, man.
Hey, Mark, what a great summit. I mean,
yeah,
in my
no
opinion, we had 565 registered. At one point, we had 300 on the line.
Yeah.
Harold Knudsen from Minneapolis is chiming in. All sorts of friends all over. I mean, I think there's a repeatable model here, Mark.
Yeah, I think so, Hunter. What I heard lots of themes today that really feed what we have in front of us is our leaders are at the forefront of business. And then what we learned from Dr. Bray, we're at the forefront of the geopolitical conflict in the world today. We're in an incredibly critical spot. And the critical thing that I also heard was that there is so much to learn. I mean, the skill set that needs to be developed, many of our leaders today talked about the skills they had to develop, from networking to leadership, some real specific leadership skills, being in front of a board. Just go across the list of skills that our leaders must develop. And I think you and I in our communities are in the unique opportunity to help foster that very learning.
Agreed, 100%. You know, great job by all. Big shout out to our partners, Rimini Street and Aryaka. I thought both of them were really spot on.
Yeah.
The panelists were great. Jeanette Horan is always a great friend, and former CIO at IBM. Pretty big job.
Yeah, no kidding. Remarkable, and great to have him here. Thanks for Hunter for leveraging your community to bring those just high recognizable brands. And it's just great to hear that level of leader speak.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, we reached out to them. I think it was probably a 50-50 kind of agenda. They want to help. They want to be part of it.
You heard it time and again, giving back, right? Leader after leader talked about giving back into the community and the brand that it creates, and just the general goodness, right? That it amplifies across the entire community and across everything that we affect.
You know, I want to give a heads up to the Sim International Board and you, Mark, for the great job you've done over the last 12 to 18 months. And it was much needed. So thanks so much for all your effort at your level.
Yeah. Thank you, Hunter. It's an honor.
Great. Hey, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. And we'll be in touch. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.